council meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Dowd,
Here.
Counselor Dahlman. Here. Counselor Fisher,
Here.
Counselor Hunter,
Here.
Counselor Donnelly,
Here.
Counselor Carlson. Here. Counselor Gabrielle, Counselor Graham.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Carlson, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our agenda in front of us. Look to council for approval. Mr. Dowd?
Your Honor, I move the agenda is published.
Second.
Whoa.
Abel.
Look at that, Carlson. That's Carlson. All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. 3 items are on the consent agenda this evening. The first item are the council minutes from the November 10th, 2025 meeting. The second item is award bid for police lockers to Montana School Equipment. This item considers purchasing lockers including installation from Montana School Equipment in the amount of $88,790. The third item is ordinance 1947, the second reading, the city manager residency requirements. This ordinance considers amending the city code section 2-36, resident of city manager, to allow the council to waive the residency requirements through contract. Is there any public comment on any of the 3 items on the consent agenda? See none, look to council for a motion. Mr. Nunley?
Thank you, Your Honor. I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Second, thank you, Ms. Carlson. Can I have a roll call vote?
Counselor Dowd,
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman. Counselor Fisher,
Aye.
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunnally,
Aye.
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion carries. No committee report this evening, so at this point in time, I'll open the meeting for public comment. Any individual wishing to address the council are asked to step forward and give your comments to the council at this time.
Thank you, Council. My name is Bill Mosley. I'm the chairman of the Kalispell Chamber of Commerce and also chairing a group called Downtown Ford Coalition, which is composed of the Chamber, the Flathead Builders Association, the Downtown Association, the Kalispell Business Improvement District, the Tourism Business Improvement District, otherwise known as Discover Kalispell, and the Northwest Montana Association of Realtors. We also thank Stephanie Brown from the Parks District for participating with us as well. Our purpose overall is to be a trusted alliance of business leaders and key stakeholders united to champion a vibrant, thriving downtown Kalispell, one that works for the local community and businesses as well as visitors that come to our area. We're studying a lot of the issues that are actually in downtown right now. There's a lot of existing plans, and we're trying to bring momentum behind those. There's dissension on some of the issues about, what should happen with parking and that sort of thing, and there is a little bit of that, but overwhelmingly you find that people agree with some of the work that's already been done and the plans supporting the changes in downtown. There's just not movement to take it someplace, and so we're meeting with the county, MDOT, people of the city. We formed 4 different groups. There's an infrastructure and design, which deals with utilities, streetscape, pedestrian mobility, the city's water and sewer lines going underneath the road. There's a brownfield underneath half of downtown. And so that's one of the working groups. Another one is on business and advocacy, dealing with recruitment, small business protections and licensing. There's an activation and culture work group, promoting events, public art, partnership, and placemaking. And then finally, a working group on engagement and communication, dealing with business engagement, storytelling, and transparency, a website for downtown. So we're trying to basically pull the various business groups together in these different kinds of in these efforts that are necessary to have a thriving downtown. You can look at downtown right now, and I'd call it stagnant at best. There are good things that are happening, but there's also empty storefronts and some other items that we'd like to work on. We conducted a survey about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. We walked to all the downtown businesses trying to solicit input. And I distributed a copy of what we have so far, and we'll continue to update this as we as we gather more information. We got 36 responses, which is the majority of the businesses that are actually downtown, but we'll continue to collect information. Only 17% said that they would definitely expand their business in downtown if they needed to expand. I think it says something about, the potential threats to the local downtown business community. And then if you look at the city's role, people seem to be kind of uncertain as to whether the city is supportive of a strong downtown or not. There was some negative comments, as you'd expect, and there's some positive comments also, but people in general were kind of in the middle, like they're not really sure, where the city's going with the downtown. One of the things that was pretty consistent in a number of the questions in the survey was that parking is by far what people perceive to be the biggest challenge. And it's probably not news to you, but there's a number of studies that talk about the importance for parking and commerce, especially retail. If you have more parking available and people can park close to the place they're trying to go to, it increases the volume of business. It's really important. I would encourage the council, as you're thinking about your goals and budgeting for next year, to consider solutions. And they're not necessarily expensive things like a parking garage. That may be a need at some point. Sometimes it's just wayfinding. I think that if you actually conducted a study, and I lived in a community before this where we did this, you would find that at most times, even when people perceive that there's no parking, that there is actually parking available, people just don't know where it is. And so for $20,000 to $30,000, you can actually do wayfinding and signage that alleviates some of those parking issues. But that was by far the number one issue that we discovered or pulled out of the surveys that we'd actually done. We'll come back and periodically report kind of where we are. We will meet with the city and the county and MDOT. We're trying to get an aligned vision about where does that road go? Is it always going to be a 4-lane highway? There's some contention, more than you'd like, but less than you maybe think. And I'll bring back our findings as we go. But you guys all have a copy of the survey if you want to look through it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Well, this could be the downtown Kalispell meeting tonight. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Kisa Davison, and I am a resident of Kalispell, but right now I'm speaking as the chair of the Kalispell Business Improvement District Board. I'm here tonight because we have recommitted, or rather deepened our commitment as a bid board to aggressive stewardship of our funds. We're fighting to keep downtown alive, and we're working hard to ensure it remains safe, welcoming, and open for business. Starting tonight, we will provide a monthly report to this council to keep you informed of our progress. We're taking this approach because the board is deeply concerned about the economic pressure facing our business community. We're seeing commercial property tax increases ranging from 30% to 80%. We're very concerned that these tax increases will have a lasting negative impact on downtown. They create a major disincentive to improve the value of these aging structures. And while the bid was not responsible for those tax increases, we are responsible for how we respond to them. For us, this isn't just a percentage on a page. They're actually real numbers hitting our bills in our mailboxes. Just to give you an idea of this reality, the Glacier Building, which is just a block this way, had their tax bill double to $45,000 this year. This tax burden will affect the 10 to 20 small business tenants who have chosen to be in downtown Kalispell. Another building on Main Street has gone from $8,000 to nearly $12,000, and that again will directly impact the local businesses located in that building. So let's be clear, these costs are not just stopping with the building owners themselves. They inevitably trickle down. They show up in rents paid by the small businesses. They show up from January through June of 2020. From January through June of 2026, the board will manage the district directly without a director. Our financial strategy moving forward is threefold. First, reduce the budget, which this helps significantly, about $3,300 a month, which will be about $20,000 in the next 6 months. But second, we're going to be leveraging that budget. We intend to use the savings not just to pay the bills, but as matching funds for grants. We're currently exploring grant proposals to fund downtown improvements, not only the beautiful flower baskets, but also some other infrastructure repairs, benches, trash cans, etc. We know that we can continue to stretch our assessment dollars as we build the vibrancy in the business district, and that's what we intend to do. So our third part of our financial strategy is to foster investment. We're refocusing our energy on encouraging economic investment in downtown. We want to see those tax increment financing dollars utilized for what they were created for, which is financing improvements that eliminate blight and strengthen the infrastructure in downtown. This is where we begin. So thank you. I look forward to all of us providing more input. And I did want to let you know that the director who, Jamie Keller, was unable to be here tonight, but she's in full support of these changes. She loves our downtown and wants to continue working with us, and she extends her apology for not being here, but wants you to know that she's in support. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tatiana Miranov de Stefano. I live here in Kalispell with my husband, between Main Street and Flathead High School. And we have mentioned this issue to a few of our neighbors who seem to also agree. The St. Matthew's Church, which currently sits on 6th Street West and Main Street, the bells in that church go off every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day. And I guess I would love to request if there's any way that we could have quiet hours in the nighttime, whatever those hours are between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And perhaps the bells go off once an hour during the day. For multitude of reasons, but that is a request that we have, if it is at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other general public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the first item, which is a public hearing, the general fund budget amendment for the central garage. Council will accept comments on a proposed amendment to transfer $600,000 from the general fund to the central garage fund. Hereby open the public hearing. We'll take comments from the public at this time on that item. And I'm going to close the public hearing, seeing nobody wanted to speak on that issue. First item is Resolution 6301. This is the budget amendment. Now this resolution considers the transfer of $600,000 from the general fund to the central garage fund to support initial design activities for a new facility. Mr. Nygaard?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this will just be the action item based off of the public hearing the council just had, if they so choose. The transfer would move $600,000 for initial design activities for a new central garage facility. Happy to answer any other questions. We have had a work session on this and multiple discussions over the last couple months, but once again, staff's here to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for staff on this? Any public comment? Seeing none, look to council for a motion. Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move resolution number 6301, a resolution amending the general fund budget of the city of Kalispell, Montana, as set forth in the 2025-2026 budget adopted by the city council.
Second.
Second, thank you, Mr. Nunley. Discussion on the item? Mr. Dowd?
Thanks. I'll speak to my motion. This was not a surprise. We just didn't know what number was going to go next to this. That we did talk about this at our budget sessions. And the city garage actually saves the people of Kalispell quite a bit of money with us not having to send these pieces of equipment out to be fixed. Instead, we could fix them here on our own. And I'm fully in support of this, the funding of this move of the central garage.
Okay. Any other discussion? Have a roll call vote.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Counselor Carlson?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion carries. Next item, ordinance 1948, first reading, conditional use permit revocation text amendment. This ordinance considers amending Kalispell zoning ordinance 1677, clarifying the process for revocation of an issued conditional use permit. Mr. Nygren?
Yeah, Mayor Council, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our planning department's Donnie McBeth for a staff report.
Hi, good evening, City Council, public, Donnie McBath, Planner 2. This proposal from the City of Kalispell seeks to amend the Kalispell zoning ordinance to clearly articulate the process for revoking an issued conditional use permit, a CUP. While Chapter 27.33 of the current ordinance outlines the procedures for processing conditional use permits, the standards of review, and the provisions relating to denial or violation of a CUP, it does not provide a detailed process for revocation. The proposed amendment is intended to close the gap. Under the framework of the Kalispell zoning ordinance, as with most municipal zoning codes, zoning districts are established by official map, and each district includes both permitted uses allowed by right and conditional uses. Uses allowed by right are those naturally expected within a district, such as a single-family residence in a residential zone, and do not require any special review process. Conditional uses, conversely, are not guaranteed. They typically involve activities that may impose greater impacts than standard uses given in district. Because of this, they undergo public review and are only approved by the City Council after a public hearing and a determination that the use is appropriate, often subject to specific conditions intended to mitigate impacts. As a CUP are granted at the discretion of the governing body. They are inherently revocable. Prior to 2008, the city ordinance included explicit language authorizing revocation of a CUP. Because of this, they undergo public review and are only approved by City Council after a public hearing and determination that the use is appropriate, often subject to specific conditions intended to mitigate impacts. As a CUP are granted at the discretion of the governing body, they are inherently revocable. Prior to 2008, the zoning ordinance included explicit language authorizing revocation of a CUP. During a comprehensive ordinance update, that specific provision was replaced with more general language intended to allow a broad range of enforcement responses, including the revocation if a property was not being operated in compliance with its CUP. However, this generally created challenges when attempting to resolve situations perceived as non-compliant. The proposed amendment provides clarity and structure by 1. Explicitly confirming that a CUP may be revoked. 2. Establishing a formal notification process for the property owner and user. 3. Designating the City Council as the review body using its standard procedures. 4. Providing the option for judicial appeal. 5. Identifying the criteria the council should consider when evaluating a revocation. And 6. Creating a pathway for reinstatement if that compliance is restored or permanent voiding of the CUP after 1 year should compliance not be achieved. Additionally, the amendment implements a review mechanism with a new owner, leasee, or user intends to continue operations under an existing CUP, ensuring clarity, accountability throughout the changes in property control. Section 27.33.045, revocation. If a conditional use for which a conditional use permit has been granted, it is not in compliance with the requirements of a conditional use permit, the city may revoke that conditional use permit. Number 2, prior to revocation, the city must send a written notice of revocation by certified mail to the property owner and the user of the property. The revocation notice must A, identify which material misrepresentation the city believes the conditional use permit holder made and or which conditions the city believes the conditional use permit holder has violated. B, state that the property must be brought into compliance within 15 business days of the date of the notice of revocation and C, set a hearing date for consideration of revocation. A CUP is revocable. It sets out the notice to the city that it makes it clear that the CUP is revocable. The city council shall be the hearing body and follow its standard hearing procedures, including but not limited to hearing from the conditional use permit holder and any other witnesses through public comment. To revoke the conditional use permit, the city council must make a finding that one or more of the criteria in section 27.33.045, section 4 has been established by a predominance of the evidence. In this case, a revocation of the conditional use permit, the determination of the city council shall be final, unless recourse is sought in Flathead County District Court within 30 days. The city council may revoke, suspend, or reconsider a conditional use permit if it determines that A, the information in the application or otherwise provided by the applicant or the applicant's agent as part of the original conditional use permit approval was false or inaccurate, whether deliberate or intentional, and that the misrepresentation was material to the city's decision to grant the conditional use permit. B, the development or use of the property is not in compliance with the application submitted as part of the original condition use permit approval. Or C, the development or use of the property is not compliant with any condition or other requirements of the condition use permit. As the granting of a conditional use permit is a matter of grace per section 27.33.090, resting in the discretion of the city, and a refusal is not the denial of a right, conditional or otherwise the revocation, suspension, or reconsideration of a conditional use permit shall also be a matter of grace and not a denial of a right, conditional or otherwise. 6. A conditional use permit revoked pursuant to the section may be reinstated at the city council's discretion within 1 year upon showing that all requirements of the conditional use permit are being met and that all other deficiencies have been remedied. Should this requirement not be met and all deficiencies not be remedied within 1 year, a new application for a conditional use permit must be submitted for review. Termination and transferability. The conditional use permit shall not run with the lot, building, structure, or use. When a new owner, lessee, or other operator intends to continue a conditional use, the new user must submit an administrative renewal application to the zoning administrator verifying terms and conditioning of the original grant of the conditional use permit. If the material changes related to the use of the property are proposed, the newer user shall reapply for a new conditional use permit subject to this chapter. Establishing that a CUP doesn't run with the land, it provides for new users to submit a renewal application and a new CUP if there are material changes. That's very important. (27.33.090) Burden of applicant. The burden of the proof for satisfying the aforementioned criteria considered for approval shall rest with the applicant and not the city council. The granting of the conditional use permit is a matter of grace, resting in the discretion of the city council, and refusal of revocation, therefore, is not the denial of right, conditional or otherwise. Should any information or representation submitted in connection with the conditional use permit be incorrect or untrue, the approval based thereon may be rescinded and other appropriate action taken. 27.33.100 Decisions based on findings. Every decision of the city council pertaining to the granting, denial, or amendment of a request for a conditional use permit or the revocation of a conditional use permit shall be based upon findings of fact, and every finding of fact shall be supported in the records of its proceedings. Kalispell Planning Commission recommends that they adopt staff report KZTA-25-02 as findings of fact and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the proposed zoning text amendment be adopted as presented. Lastly, since the Planning Commission meeting on November 12th, more feedback was received by the city. Accordingly, to address the comment, staff recommends making a motion to amend Ordinance 1948 to clarify the proposed changes apply only to conditional use permits granted after January 15th, 2026. This could be accomplished by adding an item 3 to section 27.33.010, general provisions that state, all changes made to the section 27.33 through Ordinance 1948 shall apply only to conditional use permits granted after January 15, 2026. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer at this time.
Questions for staff? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, just in terms of the applicability of these changes, and I've asked this question previously when we had the discussion of the warming center conditional use permit issue, and they can go back to the application, look at the traffic impact study, find that it was off because it's just a projection of what the traffic's going to be from this development, and they're never totally accurate. Find that the numbers are off once it's been built and it's been in place for 10 years. And say, that is a material difference that was inaccurate in the application. We're going to revoke that conditional use permit. Those townhouses, the people who bought them have to be evicted. What happens? Like, their sale gets reversed? The townhomes get destroyed? Like, legally, to me, I read this and I say that'd be perfectly legal based on the way this is written. And I don't understand that. I don't understand how that could possibly be legal. So under that scenario, how would this work under this ordinance?
So I think firstly with your question, you're saying ignore what the state is doing, which I think is not exactly what we're going to do, right? We're not going to ignore what state law is. But secondly, what the city is going to do is hold people accountable to what they tell us is true in their applications. I mean, bottom line, that's what it is. When people come in here and they apply for something and they tell the city, this is what we're going to do, and it's material, we're going to hold anybody to those standards, regardless of whether it's a conditional use permit or a plat or anything. The city needs to be able to say, we're making decisions based on what you're telling us, so that better be accurate.
So the traffic
Now,
impact
whether
study,
that would go to a court and a court would say it's inequitable or there's some other legal theory that they would say, no, we're not going to tear down townhouses, well, that may be. But remember also, there are cases like that case out on Flathead Lake with the bridge where they invested a whole lot of money, or the house up in Glacier Park where they put a house in. I mean, those things come through and it is unfortunate, but
they're violating the law. I mean, in this
Up to
case, they
them.
wouldn't violate the law, just the traffic impact study was
I think
off
that
by a
that's an
little bit.
interesting stretch on a hypothetical, that somebody would come back and say a traffic impact study, which talks about it being a projection. I mean, we're talking about a real representation that's material that was brought to council, and an instance where that is not true.
When it comes to development in front of the council, traffic is often the number one thing people talk about. So I would see that as very material. And this is not a case in the cases you cited of actually breaking the law. This would just be something that was inaccurate unintentionally in the application.
And I'm not saying that a traffic thing isn't a material thing. What I'm saying is that traffic impact studies are projections. They're in their nature, they're brought forth as this is a projection,
Right.
right?
And the
Not a
whole-
fact.
Well, but the whole warming center discussion was around projections about the impact on the neighborhood.
I guess to answer your question, if a traffic impact study was off by 100%, I think that's something the councils want to consider.
Remember that these changes, we're bringing them forth to council for due process, and then also allowing for a court where, or for a step where it goes to court. I mean, we're
understand, but-
putting in checks and balances and due process.
But we don't want to set up a system where, basically allows for really crazy decisions that wind up in court. I mean, we want to try to avoid court if we
But
can.
on the same token, Mr. Hunter, state law allows us to do that now. We had the process before. We're trying to better define the process within our own internal code that lays it out So every applicant knows, in the city of Kalispell, this is the process. Before, it was very broad. We were all struggling with, it is broad. The state says you can do it. What's the process? We're trying to establish that process through this. You know, I think more of an accurate hypothetical. Yeah, someone builds apartments. Next thing you know, well, I didn't sell them all, so now I'm going to do all hotel. Well, that's a material change. That would be something that we would look at then and go, okay, wait a minute, that is a negative impact, potential negative impact on the community. But traffic impact studies, by their nature, are estimates. You well know that. They're engineering estimates. This is the best guess that we have with the information we have, and it will change. We know in a year it will be different because everything else around the county changes, that changes the flow of impact as well. And I still question whether or not the state will allow traffic impact studies going forward because the way they keep rolling things back. Be shocked if those, I would not be shocked if those are not required in the next year or two. So yeah, just one of those things. I understand your question, but there is just within the conditional use, if you want something more concrete, get a zone change. Because essentially with conditional use permit, we are granting essentially spot zoning.
Right, which is illegal. Spot zoning is illegal.
Spot zoning is illegal.
I mean,
but this allows that additional use. That, yeah, these are allowed in our code. These are things that by application you can do. These other things you can't. But we do notify everybody who buys in that zone. These are things that may come through as a conditional use permit.
I mean, we'll get into the discussion, but part of that is an argument about just that legality and the question of conditional use permits and its appropriateness. It's essentially a legal loophole to spot zoning, which is illegal, and I think it's interesting that we actually allow it. I personally, I think there's a strong argument to be made of eliminating conditional use permits altogether. But we'll get into that.
Cool. Yeah. Love that. Mr. Graham.
Hold on.
These are questions, by the way. We just
yeah,
getting
so-
I'm mayor, I can break my rules.
With so Councilman Hunter touched on in the future here we're going to have Senate Bill 382 come into effect, and a lot of these, or I guess all CUPs, are going to be administrative CUPs made at staff level. The problem I see with that is that as the next council, I'm glad I won't have to deal with this, next council, next mayor, there are going to be complaints from individuals in the community about certain conditional use permits that have gone up. Probably they're not going to know about them, and if there is a problem with a conditional use permit, that complaint's going to go to the council through either email or phone call or whatever, or public comment. So I look at this as, I guess what my question is this kind of provides a layer of a check and balance on the approval process for that, and then if there is a problem with the conditional use permit as it comes up with the council can then talk about it and bring it up with staff, right?
That's correct. Because in the future, under 382, if, like I said, 382 there is still litigation on it out there. There's a lot of unknowns with the implementation of this and the land use planning act going forward, and there will continue likely to be lawsuits. But yes, in general, this will add another layer, because conditional use permits, if they're site specific and they meet the rules, they would be approved by staff and staff conditions them. This would add a layer that if there happened to be an issue with a neighborhood complaint, there would be another layer there that a neighborhood could file a complaint and or a neighboring property owner, at which point that could be looked at. I would say the council would still have to make the findings and do an analysis and have a hearing and do all that, but it would add another layer so that the community was protected as well with the use.
Other questions? Mr. Nunley?
Thank you, Your Honor. Certainly, I'm no legal expert, and I really appreciate everything you do for us, Jonah. It's felt and seen, so thank you. Over the last couple weeks since I've seen this, I tried to go through and look at MCA, and everything you said is right there in state law. But I guess my question is for you, Jared, have you reached out to other cities to ask, are there other cities that are following state law, or is this one of these state laws that nobody really follows?
I would say, yeah, I mean, the language before you, a lot of this comes from other cities, including other cities in the valley. So Flathead County and Whitefish, if you're to look, a lot of this language comes directly from their ordinances, has been tweaked a little bit for our particular situation, as well as Great Falls. I would say we'd be unique not having this language as it compared to other cities across the state. And nationally, honestly, conditional use permits, I know there may not be support for them, but they are in zoning. They're a typical zoning process done by municipalities across the nation, and all of them use one form or another to be able to enforce them, revoke them, whatever it may be. Like I said, there's cities that go as far as putting time limits on CUPs. Initially, the second they approve them, 5 years, they're up for renewal. So they're not automatically granted anything. So there's a number of ways cities can handle them, but given how the city's done it in the past, some of this language, how it's, being used by neighboring municipalities as well across the state, this language fits right in line with that.
Okay. And as I was going through MCA, did I actually see that we can go down to a year? That we could require every year an annual review? Not saying that we do that. I'm just saying that I thought I saw that when I was reading through there.
I'd have to look.
Okay.
Mr. Dowd?
So part of this issue that we ran into here recently was we were filing our CUPs with the county, but not the application that goes with the CUP. Have we changed that internal policy so that we're filing the applications with the CUPs at the county level?
We've changed the conditions to include the application.
Okay, so it will be filed, the application is
The application
filed.
is a reference in the conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff? Yes. The only other, I guess, real quick, I mean, Mr. Hunter, you touched on it. 382, I mean, the state is limiting more and more what we can do at the local level. Every 2 years when they meet. The comment, I'd love to see CUPs disappear, they're spot zoning. Will 382 allow us to do that? Let's say the next mayor and council decided, you know what, we're gonna strip CUPs from Kalispell City Code. Would 382 allow that, or is the state gonna strong arm say, no, you can't do that?
The state has already started to do that to a certain extent. I mean, they've limited the number, essentially they've made a bunch of uses that maybe weren't permitted uses, now permitted uses. For example, the state law that was referenced, multifamily is now a permitted use in commercial zone.
Yeah.
So that was referenced a bit ago. So certainly the state could preempt the cities from requiring any discretionary permits in the future. They could do that. They've kind of started doing that with plats, and so it would not be a surprise.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Oh.
Yeah, just real quick, again, about 382. So, in this amendment, there's a lot of language about it being grace of council. I imagine that after, should this move forward, after adoption, after 382 goes into effect, that language will have to be changed?
It'll have to be tweaked slightly. There's going to be a large text update to the zoning ordinance. This will likely fall under some of the administrative. We have an administrative section as it is, so there's going to have to be some tweaking of that language. It's still going to depend on the land use plan and preferred updates to the text and all that, but yes, there will have to be very slight tweaks to it, but in general, to be pretty consistent with what's here.
Yep, Ms. Dahlman?
Would the word grace still be used?
I can't get that far ahead. so.
Any other questions? Any public comment on ordinance 1948? Public comment. Yep, I'm sorry, public comment on ordinance 1948.
First, old people in the audience. Gosh. Good evening, council and mayor. My name is Erica Wardela. I work for the Northwest Montana Association of Realtors. And we would like to support an approval for tonight's conditional use consideration. When a realtor sells a property, it's important to them to know what the neighbors can expect and how that will look in the future for their clients. This also goes for a lot of the realtor community that does development. They want a process that is laid out and is assured to them that they can count on. I'll take an example of use in the county. So in their R1 districts, kennels are a conditional use permit. Those conditional uses are harder uses on the land, and their Board of Adjustments, the county's Board of Adjustments, looks at their conditional use permits, and they look at parking plans and lighting schemes and noise mitigation and hours of operation, and they really take a good hard look, and that is all considered the approval package. And then that gets recorded. And so when a realtor shows a potential client in a neighborhood and there's the kennel, that client is assured that that property is not going to turn into Huskies Are Us with a 24 drop-off and all-night howl-a-thons and things like that. So it's important that the neighborhood know what that conditional use permit can and cannot do, and to move forward with their decisions on property management. I did have some questions about how complaints would be filed regarding a CUP. And of course, we would want to make sure that these are true complaints, not arbitrary and capricious or vengeful. And so does it take one complaint to get it to the city council to take a look? Does we need a 3 strikes and you're out rule, which is what the county kind of uses for their short-term rental program? What can they complain about if, hours of operation are being violated, but things that they included in their application to give you a sense maybe of what's going on in the neighborhood have changed, those what I would call environmental statements or things in general. If those have changed, perhaps that's not something that is a viable complaint. It's out of the control of the person holding the CUP. So I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about the complaint process. And rules are only as good as your willingness to enforce them. And so having either an enforcement officer go out and say, look around and say, oh, howling are us, Huskies are at it again, and I'm going to file the complaint, or are we relying on the citizenry of the neighborhood to do that? Sometimes that's super difficult for a person who lives next door to sign their name to a complaint. That person can be openly hostile to them and their families. So if enforcement's included in that, that would be great. And I was 100% behind you on all of this until the ordinance 1948 came up in the discussion. And does that mean that all CUPs before the January 2026 start date are irrevocable then? Because I think there's a lot of CUPs that are out there, and I would hate to just give them a blanket, yay, go ahead. Because ordinance 1948 is going to cover you on that. So those are just the 3 things that I would be interested in hearing about. Realtors, you may not know this, but aren't always well versed in land use policy. And so when they are showing properties, they don't always understand that A conditional use may exist on that property or next door to their property, and I'm glad that Kalispell is taking that step to file the application with the plat room and the clerk and recorder so that this stuff can show up on title at closings. Other cities and may not do that, and those conditions of approval are harder to find. And so I think that that's a great step, and I like the language that is going to be adopted with this that says, yeah, this is by the grace of the city council that you are going to be allowed to do this because you are impacting your neighbors. But if your neighbors know that this is what you're going to do to mitigate those circumstances, then that's a good thing. So I also would just like to say that as a spokesperson for the Association of Realtors, I'm sent by them because you know, they all wanted to go see the new version of Wicked tonight and couldn't make it. But when I come to this podium to speak on their behalf, yeah, I'm their hired gun for sure. But everything that I say, I have to take before my government affairs committee and have them vet. And we have long discussions about pros and cons of different ordinances and policies that you may adopt. If the situation is very controversial, I'll have to take that up to my board of directors and get their thumbs up or down on this. So speaking for 1,300 realtors, please know that, you know, it's not just because I have a poor social life on Monday nights that I'm standing here in front of you, but this is something that they feel strongly about and they want to convey to you for their professional careers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we're going to look to council for a motion. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move ordinance number 1948, an ordinance amending the Kalispell zoning ordinance, ordinance number 1677 by amending chapter 27.33 conditional use permits by adding language that clarifies the revocation process in new section 27. Don't fall under that or have to adhere to what they have put out there for their approval.
So it's very common for the city to change rules, and there's likely thousands of properties that are non-conforming in the city. And as staff, we have to, it's why enforcement's not easy. We have to look, well, when was a house built? It could be as simple as, you know, a couple of weeks ago, the eve encroachment that was approved. That's gonna affect thousands of homes.
Okay.
We have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. When was a house built? So to answer your question, the city, we still feel and know that conditional use permits have always been revocable. This is just clarifying the language moving forward. Any old CUPs are gonna fall under the rules that were in place at that time the CUP was granted. So, and given that, like, you know, the staff report said, we did have language prior to 2008. So we may go back, the language may be a bit different depending on how old those CUPs are. So we have a gap between 2008 and now that we would follow under the rules in place. So, like I said, it doesn't make CUPs or old CUPs irrevocable. They would still be revocable. They would just follow the process that was lined up at the time they were issued. And can I answer the enforcement question as well?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I would like that, yes, please.
Okay, so enforcement, we do not have code enforcement officer, but as with anything in the zoning ordinance, we always seek voluntary compliance. We're not gonna go issue a certified mail, you got 15 days to comply. We're always gonna start with, hey, did you even realize you have a CUP? Maybe they do or didn't. If you didn't, here it is, here's the conditions, we give them time. So there's a process that happens before it would even elevate to an official proceedings before council. Like I said, we're always gonna go after a very casual letter, before we go about doing that. But that's the way we deal with enforcement. It never goes directly to the city attorney and directly up to district court. There's always a process that is outlined before it would even get to that point. But, you know, at a certain point, if you've gone a number of notices, you haven't gotten voluntary compliance, then you're gonna have to move forward with the process in order to get that motion started.
Okay, discussion on the motion? Ms. Dahlman?
In its current form, I just don't know if I can support this. I hear what you say about the complaint process. I do have worries about that. And I personally, I don't like the word grace by that being in the code.
You like it?
I don't like it.
You don't like?
I don't like it. So, yeah, I just don't know if I can support it in this current form.
Mr. Dowd?
Looking through this, everything's basically mirrors state law. It's just we didn't have it in our code from 2008 till now, even though we would fall back on state law. The one thing that I don't like about this is the 15-day requirement. I don't know where we got this 15 days stuck in our head, but government doesn't move that fast. We changed it with the grass height ordinance, I think, as well. We changed it to 15 days, and I had problems with that. If we could go back to if you're on vacation for 2 weeks, you come back, there's a letter in the mail, and you got 1 day to fix the problem, right? Not that staff wouldn't have contacted you before, but that's outside of the legal purview, right? So the 15-day requirement, I think, is too short. I'd like to see at least 30 days. That's just my 2 cents on that. And I also would like to point out that the council's going to have to deliberate on this, whatever council happens to be up here at the time. There's a difference between physical conditional requirements, like allowing those row houses we had in the development on 2 Mile, where we allowed them to go higher than ordinance allowed, right? Or than zoning allowed. And there's a difference, there's also behavioral conditional requirements that actually probably affect the neighborhood more because it's not a physical change, right? It's something that they have to keep up with. So those are things that the council is going to have to take in mind. And, you can't just revoke one without proving that there was a negative impact on the neighborhood. So, that's going to fall to the council like it always has. So I don't have a problem with that, those pieces of it. I don't think anybody's going to be ridiculous enough to say, if somebody buys a development and we allowed 15 extra feet of height, and we're saying, no, we don't want that anymore, you got to tear those buildings down. That's not reasonable, right? But if something does have a ongoing effect on the neighborhood, and most of these are going to be behavioral in nature, like for a liquor store, you can't consume the alcohol on the property, right? And if we find out that there's complaints about that, and we find out that that's the case, then we'll be all in that property owner to fix that situation, or we could remove the CUP. So there's a lot of things that the council will still have to deliberate on. This is very much a council-involved process. Nothing's going to happen automatically. If you get that notice that you have 15 days to fix something and you don't fix it in 15 days, the council's still going to have to put it on their schedule. They have to, go through the findings of fact. And as we know with our recent deliberations, that takes a long time. It took us like 1.5 years in this last case, right? So it's not like an immediate thing. So I think the 15-day thing can be adjusted without too much impact. Thanks.
Okay. Other discussion on the motion? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a lot. I have a lot of motions that I would like to make. We received a letter from Institute for Justice, representing the Warming Center about this proposal. They had a number of comments and I agreed with them. And so my motions are going to be focused on those comments from that letter. I will say that, like they said in that letter, I agree with the process. Like if we're going to have conditional use permits and we're going to have, the ability to revoke, to have a process that clearly defines that makes sense. And we saw during the Warming Center debacle, in my opinion, that not having a process was a problem. But I think the way this is written, basically the approach I'm taking is if this allows for what happened in the Warming Center, which I thought was an incredible injustice, to happen again, it's a problem. And we need to make sure that this is written in a way that that can't happen again. And the particular problem with what happened was the fact that we were looking at unintentional predictions of the future that nobody could have known at the time, that changed over the years, and looked to deprive them of their property right with their use of the property based on those changes over time. And, we talk about the transportation impact studies, and you say, well, that's a projection. Yeah, everything about the Warming Center was about projections. So I have a lot of motions. I'll start with pertaining to section 27.33.060. So point 6 of the settlement with the Warming Center acknowledges that a CUP is a vested property right that runs with the land. Amending the ordinance to say that conditional use permit does not run with the land is, in my opinion, a violation of the implied intent of point 6 of our settlement with the Warming Center.
Did you read the full thing?
What full thing?
Did you read the full thing?
The full settlement?
Point 6?
Yeah.
The point 6?
Yep.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me. I didn't bring it because I didn't think this was going to be a thing about the Warming Center, so I didn't bring it.
Yeah, of course I
So I don't have it memorized or anything. So I know there's another one in there that goes and says, as long as the conditions are being upheld.
Yep. Yep. I'm going to
Okay.
get to that. I'm going to get to the conditions. So, and also making a new user renew the permit creates unnecessary bureaucratic burden for staff and creates a great deal of uncertainty for businesses that discourage investment. So when I heard the public comment this evening talking about kind of the business interest in that certainty, this section creates a great deal of uncertainty because if you're going to buy a business from somebody that has a conditional use permit, but you have to come in after you buy the property and get a renewal for the conditional use permit, but you don't know whether or not it's going to be renewed, that's a problem. That's not creating business certainty.
The use of the property could change dramatically.
Well, then it'd be a violation of the permit and it'd be a violation of the condition. We're not talking about a violation. This is, if they plan to buy the property and maintain it just exactly as is, they would still have to come in and renew that permit. And there's no guarantee they'd get a renewal of that permit under 27.33.060. That's a problem. So I move to amend the ordinance to strike section 27.33.060.
Second.
Motion second. Quick question on the motion. The staff on the conditional use permit. The new owner, lessee, or operator, basically through the due diligence, can they look to the city for the administrative permit prior to closing on the sale?
That's exactly what would happen. That's the whole point of this section, and that's very common. We often, if somebody enters into a buy-sell contingent upon, it could be a simple contingent upon sign off of the zoning, not even going this deep. So, yeah, it would be an administrative sign off as long as they verify, check the box that they've seen the CUP, they're gonna operate it the exact same, they continue to operate it. It just doesn't automatically renewal. It actually creates a process where they're made aware of it and they're made aware of the conditions so that they can comply. And if they choose not to, they don't have to buy the property, or they can apply to the CUP, to the council for new conditions or a modification that maybe fits their needs better in that, if that were the case.
But the CUP is on the title. So they'll be aware with a title search of buying the
Right,
property.
yeah, so at closing, yeah, that.
So they
yeah.
don't need this process to be aware of what the conditions are of the permit, because that's part of the title search. It'll be on the permit. I just think this creates an unnecessary administrative process that serves no purpose other than to open the door to, causing problems for somebody if they're going to meet the permit, they're gonna meet the conditions. Why do we have this in here? And all the sections of the rest of this stuff, it deals with the issue of violating the conditions and so forth.
So I think part of the thing, Mr. Hunter, is someone buys it. Well, then they could later argue, well, I didn't sign off on that. I didn't agree to that. I bought it subject to it, but I didn't agree to it. So this is a process where everybody's crystal clear what that property is subject to when you buy it. What are the exact terms? So it's crystal clear to them, and they sign off on that. Then if there is a future issue, that council can look, you signed off on this. You can't take the ignorance is bliss, I didn't know approach and try to convince a council to grant you post facto permission.
There should be no reason why they have ignorance is bliss. It's on the title. If we wanted to just have a mailing that we say we're going to mail every new owner of a conditional use permit, a notice of the conditional use permit, okay. That seems like extra staff time that's unnecessary.
When I sold
but
a property in Whitefish subject to a conditional use permit, the buyer went through this exact same process. And it took all about an hour.
Again, but the key on this is that it says it doesn't run with the land, which we said in the settlement in point 6 that it does run with the land.
Well, the settlement is separate. The settlement did not become zoning law in the city of Kalispell. The settlement agreement is a settlement agreement that we reached through arbitration with the Warming Center.
I do have the settlement agreement in front of me if you want me to read section 6.
That's, I guess, my question is, is that zoning law now? Because if that's zoning law, what's the point?
This is our contract between us and the Warming
Exactly,
Center.
it's a contract.
But this affects the Warming Center unless we pass the.
No, they're subject to a contract, Mr. Hunter.
No, they're subject to
They're
conditional use
subject to
permit.
a settlement agreement.
And this affects it.
It does. We can't change a contract after we've signed it. by
We're doing
changing
it with
the
this ordinance.
No, because that's what overrules. That supersedes it with the Warming Center.
And again, whether that language is added to this or not, again, we have non-conforming uses. And what the Warming Center is subject to is the law that was in place when their CUP was granted. Keep in mind, we can't do a de facto reverse backup, pull people's, we can't. So we're adding that language to make that crystal clear, but that's the way it works anyway. It's staff's recommendation that you add that language.
So we have motion second to amend to strike all of 060. That was your,
Yes.
okay. Any other discussion on it? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Dowd,
No.
Counselor Dahlman,
Right.
Counselor Fisher,
No.
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
No.
Counselor Carlson,
No.
Counselor Graham,
No.
Mayor Johnson.
No. Back to the original motion. You have more amendments? You
I
have another
do.
amendment?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Your Honor. So I have a couple motions on this point. So the city, I don't believe, should be able to revoke a permit over unintentional errors, general statements, or predictions of future conditions the applicant has no control over that were made in the application. We also shouldn't be able to revoke a permit for a new landowner based on such errors or statements made by a previous landowner. If there is something specific in the application that we think is key to our approval, we should make it one of the specific actionable conditions of approval that is specific to the parcel of land with the permit and not tied to things that may occur blocks away. We could also revoke a permit based on some specific and egregious violation of city ordinance or some intentional lie or evidence of fraud. So with that, I move to amend the ordinance so that section 27.33.05 2A reads, quote, identify which intentional material misrepresentation the city believes the conditional use permit holder made, and/or which city ordinances the city believes the conditional use permit holder has substantively violated, and/or which conditions the city believes the conditional use permit holder has violated.
Second.
Adding the word intentional as the third word is your amendment?
It's adding the word intentional and then also adding, because
What was the other? I'm just trying to note them on my copy.
yeah. And then the other part is that substantively violated city ordinance.
Okay. Motion second. Discussion on this item? Yeah, I guess my question, looking at legalese, material, typically materiality, isn't there some intention behind that in the legal doctrine? Or do we not, do you need the intentional language in there when you have material? Because typically if something's material.
Those are two different things.
Two different
Intentional
things.
and material. Material means it's not something that would have, like if it was a very minor thing that wouldn't change your ultimate decision. Like if somebody said it was going to be mauve and it's periwinkle, I don't know, something very, very minor that wouldn't have changed what your course you took. Material is, it would have changed your decision if it was not true.
No, in tax court, when it's material, they pretty much figure you intended it. Okay. Discussion on adding the word intentional. And a roll call vote. And the other change.
Yeah, the full edition.
Counselor Dowd?
No.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
No.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
No.
Counselor Carlson?
No.
Counselor Graham?
No.
Mayor Johnson?
No. Back to the original.
So on that same line, I move to amend section 27.33.0454A to remove reference to unintentional misrepresentation so that it's instead intentional, and replace section 27.33.0454B to read, quote, the development is substantively in violation of one or more city ordinances, end quote.
Second.
So on A, striking unintentional, essentially massaging the language around that, and then adding in and violates some other municipal code.
Right.
Okay. Discussion on that? Roll call vote.
Counselor Dowd?
No.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
No.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
No.
Counselor Carlson?
No.
Counselor Graham?
No.
Mayor Johnson?
No. Back to the original motion.
Okay, last motion that I have. So a conditional use permit is a matter of discretion only at the time of initial approval. After that, a property owner must have certainty of retaining the permit as a right only revoked under very specific and clearly egregious violations of law or specific conditions of approval. So revoking the permit should not be a matter of grace by the council. Now, there's been some discussion about that word grace. The Institute for Justice had a whole discussion of this in their letter about kind of origins of the word grace and whether or not that's a legally applicable term in today's law, in case law. And they believe that the word grace should be struck from it entirely. So in light of that, I move to amend the ordinance to strike section 27.33.0455 and to strike 27.33090 after the first sentence.
Second.
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, move to strike section 27.33045 and to strike 27.33090 after the first sentence.
So what's the problem with the word grace?
One is that it, the Institute for Justice, their letter talks about kind of the history of the word grace and that it's like tied to the monarchy and all this stuff, and that doesn't have a lot of applicability in current law, but
Is it
also
wrong?
specifically, what's that?
Is it wrong?
I do believe it's wrong because I think the notion that you're getting at with the term grace is basically discretion, right? The council has its discretion to do this, and I agree that
I know what it means.
Oh, then what
I
you're asking?
know. It just sounds like we're getting into semantics here.
So my point is that when the conditional use permit first comes before city council, I fully agree. The council has full ability to say yes, no, whatever it wants to do there. But once it's issued, there's so much that's riding on it. People invest in it, people trust in it. There's all this tied up in terms of property rights into that permit being issued that you can no longer have kind of the discretion to just revoke it. It's very specific to whether or not you're violating the condition and so forth. And so I think the language in here should reflect that and not imply that it's easily revoked, a matter of grace by the council after it's been approved and allowed.
You're basing, man.
Sounds like a no kings protest or
You're basing all
something. I
this
don't know.
on something that's already been handled, on things that we as a council have to decide with future issues in the city. But you're basing everything on something that's already been settled from the past, even your legal references. That we have to be able to do business going forward.
Absolutely.
But you're basing everything on history.
Because this council has shown its poor judgment and it's using the law, the conditional use permit, as a way to harass a property owner and cause injustice.
Are you saying that's what this is right now?
No, I'm saying that this, as written, will allow us, the way it's written, or a future council, to make poor judgment and go after a property owner in a way that would not be appropriate in my mind. So I'm trying to clean it up to make sure that it's tighter so that a future council that might
Actually,
have a
Mr. Hunter,
bias
closer,
against.
because essentially what we're saying is the burden of proof for satisfying the aforementioned criteria considered for approval shall rest with the applicant, not the city council. Stopping there, while not clarifying that the city council has the ability, the grace by grace, we have the ability to remove it. It is not a right. When we look at case law across the United States, a permit is a permit. Base root language, permission. Permission can be withdrawn.
But you have to meet all the condition, all the stuff in this ordinance. So it's not just like, yes. And so that's.
So the burden's with the applicant to meet everything within this ordinance. This is just reinforcing that it can be pulled. Stripping this out, you essentially weaken the position of the city in any future case.
No,
yeah.
You
weaken the position
that's
of the
the idea. I mean, that's, what we saw with the Warring Center was that, we never should have gotten to that point. And if we had a tighter
Right about
ordinance
that.
that's explained exactly under what conditions we could actually revoke, then we wouldn't have gotten into that mess. We wouldn't have, had to settle out of court and pay the Warring Center and apologize, because we would have had an ordinance that would have walked us through what we could and could not do, and it would have steered us away from making that mistake. And that's what I want this ordinance to do, steer future councils away from making poor judgments.
Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to go back to a question for staff with new comments that have been brought up. Is there any part of this that deviates from state law?
No.
So it was already in state law. I mean,
And I'm gonna say matter of grace, that language appears throughout Montana as well. I
All right,
think it's
thank
in
you.
Whitefishes.
So a motion second to strike 5 and everything after the first sentence in, correct?
Correct.
Any other discussion? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Dowd,
No.
Counselor Dahlman,
Aye.
Counselor Fisher,
No.
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
No.
Counselor Carlson,
No.
Counselor Graham,
No.
Mayor Johnson.
No. Back to the original motion.
So I don't have any more motions, but I would like to just speak about this a little bit more. I am concerned that, this sets us up for more litigation, which is unfortunate. But I also, just the idea of conditional use permits, like I said, I think if we're going to have conditional use permits, having a process, not this one, but something tighter, as I had proposed, makes sense. But thinking about this and having this experience, I question the value of conditional use permits. If there's something that we don't want in a certain area, then our zoning should say it's not allowed there. If there's something that we're okay with, but shouldn't have certain impacts, we heard about like the dog, a dog place, or we heard about a paint store, then we should have like a nuisance code that covers those impacts. We like noise, no impact, whether it's a dog or any other place, shouldn't have noise that impacts its neighbors. And then you just enforce your code. The fact that we would apply certain things to only one specific property, one specific user, in that area, rather than applying it to any user for the impacts it's having, I think doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And the example that was brought up at the Planning Commission too, the idea of a bar, and you grant a permit for a bar, and the bar is up late, people are up late, it's noisy, people are getting in fights outside the bar and stuff. Like nobody wants that next to them. I get that. I can tell you, I lived in a house next to a house where people were up late, getting in fights in the yard at 2 a.m. Like the problem is those impacts, right? So you should have an ordinance, nuisance ordinance or other things that address that. Because we're not going to do a CUP for every single family home. This was a single family home in my instance. For every single family home, because it has the same impact that you're concerned about with the bar, that you would issue a conditional use permit for the bar. So I'm inclined to just, look at getting rid of conditional use permits altogether and beefing up our nuisance ordinance and any other ordinance we might have regarding smells or noises or anything else. And that also looking at our zoning and saying, okay, this type of use isn't allowed in there. And do it that way, because this does smell to me like spot zoning, which is illegal for a reason. And it allows for too much of the city kind of getting in on specific properties that it might not like for whatever reasons and picking on that particular property owner, which I don't think is fair. So.
But yet you want 50 nuisance people running around, 100 of them? How many do we hire?
Well, that's true for anything on our ordinance, right?
Let's bring it back to we're back to the original motion. Mr. Graham.
That's right.
Mr. Dowd, you were talking about a 15-day thing. Did you want to offer something up for slaughter?
Sure. I'll fail as well. Your Honor, I would move to change any reference to 15 days in our proposed changes to move to 30 days.
Second.
Motion second, discussion on your motion. You already talked about it, but any more to add?
No, I just think, expecting 15 days compliance in some matters is unreasonable. And it's not historic in government ordinances. We have kind of lately been leaning on the 15-day thing, but historically it's been 30, 60, 90. And I think we should, make it, you couldn't ask the government to do anything in 15 days.
Can
let
I ask you
alone,
to clarify, is it 30 business days or 30 calendar days?
Those are 30 business days, since business days is already in the ordinance.
Just to be clear.
Thank you very much.
Any other discussion on that? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Dowd,
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman,
Aye.
Counselor Fisher,
Aye.
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
Aye.
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion carries back to the original motion, but as amended with the 30 days, business days. Any other discussion? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Dowd,
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman, Counselor Fisher,
Aye.
Counselor Hunter,
No.
Counselor Nunley,
Aye.
Counselor Carlson.
Aye.
We're on the main motion.
There was never an amendment to change the effective date.
Mr. Graham spoke against it. Didn't
No,
you?
we didn't.
Oh, the effective, oh, I'm sorry,
No, we're in the
Right,
middle
you're
of the vote, yeah. So where were we at?
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Yep,
did speak against it.
okay. Northwest View subdivision and townhome preliminary plat and conditional use permit, resolution 6302 preliminary plat and conditional use permit. This item considers allowing 111 detached single-family lots and 38 attached townhouse units on 42.58 acres located 750 feet north of the intersection of Stillwater Road and Taylor. Presentation.
Good evening, City Council again, Donnie McBath, Planner 2. This presentation outlines a request for approval of the Northwest View subdivision and conditional use permit associated with staff reports KPP 25-03 and KCU 25-05. The subdivision is located along the Stillwater Road corridor and continues the established pattern of residential development in this area. The project area is approximately 42.58 acres within city limits and zoned R3, consistent with urban residential designation in the growth policy. The proposal includes 149 residential lots, 111 single-family detached, and 38 attached townhome units. The townhome component requires a conditional use permit in the R3 zoning district, which is being considered together with the preliminary plat this evening. The subdivision layout extends the existing neighborhood framework to the south and east using the same block structure and sidewalk system that has been developed in prior phases. The design introduces a mix of lot types while maintaining a compatible residential scale and character with the surrounding development. The project site is located on the west side of Stillwater Road, north of the existing Westview subdivision and west of Stillwater Estates. Glacier High School is located to the southeast and functions as a major public service and transportation anchor in this part of the city. To the north is LHC Gravel Operation. A berm and fencing currently provide visual and noise buffering between the active pit and the project site. The berm is tied to the gravel operation and will be removed when reclamation occurs under state requirements. A later slide will address how the subdivision design accounts for that transition. The surrounding land use pattern to the east and south is primarily residential and reflects that planned development direction for the Stillwater Road corridor. The Kalispell growth policy designates this area as urban residential. The designation supports neighborhood-scale residential development at urban densities with municipal water and sewer service. The property is zoned R3, which is the implementing zoning district for the urban residential classification. The R3 district allows single-family homes and attached townhome units with townhomes reviewed through the conditional use permit process to evaluate compatibility with the surrounding development. The subdivision aligns with both the growth policy designation and the R3 zoning framework, with the conditional use permit under consideration this evening addressing the associated townhome component. The subdivision is designed around an interconnected internal street network that provides multiple access points and evenly distributes traffic throughout the neighborhood. The layout extends from Dragonfire Avenue and Lumberjack Place, both of which connect to Stillwater Road, ensuring a cohesive link with a broader transportation system. The townhome groupings are situated to align with the established block pattern, creating a consistent and visual balanced streetscape along with primary neighborhood corridors. The lot configuration and set street design continue the residential pattern established by adjacent developments to the south and east, preserving the neighborhood's cohesive pattern and connective design. Townhomes are permitted in the R3 zoning district through the conditional use permit process. The CUP review addresses the placement and the configuration of the attached units to ensure they fit within the established block pattern and circulation network. The parent lots for the townhome groupings meet the required minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet prior to sublotting into individual fee simple units. Shared driveway access will be used, and driveway widths are limited to maintain a consistent streetscape and pedestrian environment along the boulevard sidewalk system. Final sublot layout, shared access arrangements, and maintenance responsibilities will be finalized during the final plat and building permit review stages. The traffic impact study conducted for this project demonstrates that the surrounding roadway network will continue to operate at an acceptable level of service. Once the planned improvements are in place, primary access to the subdivision will be provided by Dragonfire Avenue and Lumberjack Place, both which connect directly to Stillwater Road. This design maintains consistency with the existing street framework and distributes traffic efficiently through multiple access points. Additionally, the subdivision layout has been designed to preserve the future Stillwater Road roundabout corridor, ensuring that long-term transportation improvements identified by the Public Works can be accommodated without conflict. The new subdivision will be served by municipal water and sewer as part of public improvements in this area. A 16-inch water main extension along Stillwater Road is required. That extension completes the loop system in this section for the city and provides the necessary fire flow capacity for the development and surrounding area. Fire protection will be provided by Station 62, hydrant spacing, access design, and fire flow verification will be reviewed by engineering stage during construction plan submittal. Parkland dedication is required at a rate of 0.03 acres per dwelling unit. For 149 lots, the required dedication is 4.47 acres. The preliminary plat identifies approximately 1.95 acres of parkland within the subdivision. Additionally, land dedication or recreational improvements will be needed at later stages to meet the full requirement. The Parks and Recreation Department will review the location, access, and design of the park areas during the final design. A waiver of right of protest, a future park maintenance district, will be included on the final plat. The northern boundary of the subdivision is adjacent to LHC gravel operation. A berm and fencing are currently present as part of the operation. The berm is tied to the active use and will be removed when reclamation occurs under state requirements. A note will be placed on final plat to document that the berm is temporary and will be removed in the future. The lot depths along the northern edge have been extended to provide space for the future private fencing and landscaping once reclamation is completed. In summary, the subdivision has evaluated under the preliminary plat review criteria, and the townhome component has been reviewed pursuant to the conditional use permit standards. The proposal is consistent with the urban residential growth policy designation and the R3 zoning district, with a layout that complements the established development pattern along the Stillwater Road corridor. Required infrastructure and access improvements are incorporated into the subdivision design, while parkland dedication, utility extensions, and a detailed engineering will be addressed through review stages. It should be noted that the condition number 29 has been removed from the conditions of approval. The subject matter of that condition will instead be addressed during site review discussions with the Public Works Department. allowing for appropriate evaluation of a driveway design, access width, and related engineering considerations as part of the final development review. Based on these findings, the Planning Commission recommends adopting the staff report as findings and fact and forwarding recommendation of approval to the Kalispell City Council for both the preliminary plat and the conditional use permit, subject to conditions outlined herein. We are available to answer any questions council may have.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. What are the sizes, typical sizes of the lots in this proposal?
6,000 square feet.
6,000, okay. And then with the inclusion of the townhomes, does that result in more units in the development than if they were single family? I know sometimes they.
Yes, that's correct.
it
Yeah,
does,
there's
yeah.
going to be more units than if it was single family.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, take public comment on Resolution 6302, the preliminary plat and the conditional use permit at one time, and then we'll consider those successively.
Good evening. My name is Eric Mulcahy with Sand Surveying. I'm one of the teams of consultants that's working on this particular project. We concur with the staff report that was written. We feel they did a very good job with the analysis of the project, and we also concur with the Planning Commission's striking of condition 29, and then we would be happy to answer any questions that you might have of us.
Thank you.
Ron Gerson, 9 4th Avenue, East Kalispell. Just a question to the council and to the planning commission. Any consideration of affordable, attainable housing in this project? I admit to not having followed it since its inception, but I'm just curious to know if that's been taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. No other public comments. To council for a motion on Resolution 6302, the preliminary plat. Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move resolution number 6302, a resolution conditionally approving the preliminary plat of Northwest View subdivision described as tract of land situated, lying, and being in the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter and in the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter, all of section 25, township 29 north, range 22 west, PMM, Flathead County, Montana, and more particularly described as tract 1 of certificate of survey number 22839, records of Flathead County, Montana, containing 42.583 acres, more or less, subject to and together with all appurtenant easements of record.
Second.
Second. Motion second. Discussion on the motion on the preliminary plat. Have a roll call vote. Ms. Carlson?
Aye.
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 Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Counselor Carlson?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye. Motion carries. Next, look for a motion on the conditional use permit.
I can't find it either. Now I'm locked up.
What's that?
Do you still have it up there?
It's, I can't find it.
It's gonna take me forever.
My whole thing is just all Boubard, I'm trying to get there.
Maybe don't have a specific.
Mr. Dowd?
The wording's not in there, so I'm gonna wing it.
Okay.
Your Honor, I move that we grant the conditional use permit for the attached townhomes.
Second.
Seriously, I looked through this whole thing, I couldn't find the,
The
It'll be on the
38
memo.
single-family townhome units. Subject to the conditions of approval. Mr. Dowd?
sure. Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
I'll write it.
So motion second to approve the conditional use permit with all conditions attached. Okay, discussion on the motion?
Who was our second? I'm sorry.
Oh, the second, Mr. Dowd made the motion. You made the second.
I did.
Again. Ms. Carlson made the second.
Yeah, this is almost moot. We won't be doing this here in the near future. They could just wait like 6 months or a year and have this administratively done, but
30 days.
30 days, okay.
30 days.
So yeah, it's just a little bit of going through the motions here.
And I think
And the new conditional the wording for that will be in place for this, so.
Okay. Any other discussion? I think the only thing I'll do is address comment. I mean, as we've commented before at the council, we don't have anything within code that allows us, and even I think state law prohibits putting restrictions on X number of units have to be affordable or within, unless someone's receiving tax credit dollars or something like that, where there's strings attached. But as it is, you know, really with everything within code, we're pushing inventory. So, any other discussion? Have a roll call vote.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Counselor Carlson?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. Next item, Resolution 6303, North Meadows Subdivision Preliminary Plat. This resolution considers preliminary plat approval of 44 townhouse attached single-family lots on 12.13 acres at 1859 South Meadows Drive. Mr. Niger?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, and once again, I'll turn it over to Donnie for his staff report.
Thank you, Council. Donnie McBath. Thank you, Public. Planner 2. Roger Foley has submitted an application for a preliminary plat approval for the North Meadows subdivision. The proposal consists of 44 townhouse attached single-family lots, 22 parent lots on approximately 12.13 acres, including residential lots, internal roads, and shared common areas. The subdivision includes variance requests related to the Ashley Creek setback, generally 200 feet, proposed to be reduced in some areas to approximately 100 feet. Cul-de-sac road length, generally 600 feet, proposed to be extended to approximately 870 feet. And a block length, generally a maximum of 600 feet, proposed to be extended to approximately 900 feet. The applicant originally came forward during the summer of 2025 with request for annexation, initial zoning of RA1, residential apartment, and a conditional use permit for a 99-unit multifamily development. Following a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission, the City Council approved the annexation but modified the zoning to R4 residential to match the surrounding area because the R4 zoning district does not allow multifamily dwellings. The conditional use permit did not move forward. By selecting the R4 designation, council effectively directed the property toward a residential subdivision rather than a multifamily project. Townhomes are categorized as attached single-family dwellings, example, single-family homes constructed with no setback between adjoining units, and a permitted outright within the R4 zone. During council discussion, it was acknowledged that the subdivision variances would likely be necessary as part of a townhouse subdivision proposal. The location, the property is currently undeveloped, Review of historical aerial imagery shows it has remained a natural grass field dating back to at least 1985. Utilities, the development proposal includes municipal utilities, including a private lift station, along with the associated storm drainage improvements. The subdivision would primarily access Bluestone Drive, utilizing the existing extension of South Meadows Drive. While not anticipated to develop the near term, the right-of-way for a future extension of South Meadows to Sunnyside Drive was previously annexed into the city when the initial phases of the South Meadows subdivision were constructed. Bluestone Drive runs east to west through the subdivision. The eastern extension connects to the Airport Road near the Legion baseball field and airport, with the additional potential connections to Airport Road and Teal Drive, Merganser Drive, and Destiny Lane. The western extension would connect to Denver Avenue and Sunnyside Drive. In addition, there is an off-ramp from US Highway 93 bypass located just west of the Denver-Sunnyside intersection. Although there is no corresponding on-ramp, this off-ramp provides an alternate means of access to the subdivision. The overall site is relatively flat, with no major topographical or geological constraints that would limit development. The applicant submitted a geotechnical report prepared by Alpine Geotechnical dated July 2nd, 2025, with an addendum dated October 30th, 2025. The report did not identify any significant impediments to development. The original report was prepared for the previously proposed multifamily project and includes recommendations that should be followed during construction. The addendum confirms that the original findings and recommendations remain applicable to the current subdivision request. The addendum addressed 3 additional considerations. First, basements are not recommended due to the subgrade conditions that become softer with depth. However, this recommendation does not preclude crawl spaces. Second, the environmental assessment noted a potential presence of hydric soils in the western portion of the subdivision based on general soil survey information. Detailed on the site investigation and borings concluded hydraulic soils are not present. Third, the addendum noted that the geotechnical report recommends a minimum 30-foot setback from the slope crest above Ashley Creek to ensure that the existing slope stability is not impacted by building surcharge loads. I will address that point in more detail. As you can see here, annexed zoned R4 and the surrounding area. The Kalispell Growth Policy Future Land Use Map designates this subject property as urban residential. The urban residential designation supports the existing R4 zoning at densities of up to 12 units per acre and can also support more intensive residential development, including up to 20 units per acre or more under RA1 zoning. The proposed subdivision has a density of approximately 3.6 units per acre. The City of Kalispell Growth Policy, Planet 2034, Chapter 4A, Housing, encourages a variety of residential development options that provide housing for all sectors and income levels within the community. Municipal services, including sewer, water, and streets, are present in the vicinity and are available to serve the subject property. The internal subdivision street network will be constructed to at least the minimum local street design standard under the city's standards for design and construction, including sidewalks, a landscape boulevard, street lighting, and a curb and gutter. All roads will be designed and built in accordance with applicable city standards, given the townhouse configuration and the absence of alleys. Shared driveways would be utilized wherever feasible to reduce the number of individual access points and minimize impacts on the streetscape. Traffic impact studies, the TIS, were prepared by Avalon Traffic Services to evaluate anticipated traffic impacts. The original study, completed in May 2025, analyzed the previously proposed 99-unit multifamily development. The October 2025 update reflects the revised plan for 44 townhouse units and incorporates comments provided during the initial review. The updated study concludes that Bluestone Drive will continue to operate within its intended capacity as a local street. Pursuant to the city standards, new development must maintain or improve the level of service of existing roadway intersections. No additional migration is recommended. However, it should be noted that the traffic control measures referenced in the TIS for Bluestone Drive, Beg Park Drive intersection have already been implemented. Per subdivision regulations, the development is required to dedicate a minimum of 0.03 acres of parkland per dwelling unit for single-family lots, equating to 1.32 acres for the 44 proposed lots, or equivalent value in land plus improvements. The preliminary plat, approximately 6.72 acres of common area open space, while not all common area is suitable for active park facilities, a substantial portion of the property, when programmed with the appropriate amenities, can adequately serve the subdivision's parkland requirement. Police and fire protection, because a subdivision exceeds 30 residential units served by a single access point, all homes will be required to install residential fire sprinkler systems in accordance with the fire code. Here is a picture of the floodplain, and as you can see, the slope where Ashley Creek is. The proposal includes 3 variance requests. The first, a reduction of the standard 200-foot setback from Ashley Creek to approximately 100 feet in certain locations. 2, an increase in cul-de-sac length from the typical maximum of 600 feet to approximately 870 feet. And 3, an increase in block length from the standard 600-foot maximum to approximately 900 feet. When reviewing a subdivision variance, the ordinance provides 5 criteria for consideration. 1, public health, safety, and welfare. The granting of the variance must not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or general welfare, not injurious to adjoining properties. Number 2, uniqueness of conditions. The variance must be based on conditions that are unique to the property on which the variance is sought and not generally applicable to other properties. Hardship versus inconvenience. Number 3, because of the property's particular physical circumstances, such as surrounding shape or topographical conditions, strict enforcement of the regulations would result in undue hardship to the owner, as opposed to a mere inconvenience. Number 4, public cost. The variance must not result in any substantial increase in public cost. Number 5, consistency with other regulations. The variance must not, in any manner, violate or vary the provisions of any adopted zoning regulations or for the growth policy. Stream and setback. Under section 28.3.07, a minimum setback from rivers and streams is required, allowing only limited uses. For Ashley Creek, as well as the Flathead, Stillwater, Whitefish Rivers, this setback is 200 feet. Section 28.307F provides that. The developer may request a reduction in the setback listed in section 3.07B by providing the planning department with sound scientific information and reasonable migration to address potential impacts. In this case of bank stabilization, a geotechnical report shall be required. The review and approval, conditional approval, or denial of the requested reduction shall be in accordance with section 28.7.01 variances of these regulations. In other words, the regulation treats 200 feet as the starting point, but specifically anticipates reductions where the request is supported by project-specific analysis and appropriate migration, including geotechnical evaluation. The geotechnical addendum recommends a minimum of 30 feet setback from the slope crest above Ashley Creek to ensure that the existing slope stability is not affected by building surcharge loads. The illustration shown above includes the 30-foot slope crest setback, the thin red line, the proposed 100-foot stream setback, the thicker dotted red line, and the 200-foot standard setback, the black line. The graphic also shows the 100-foot wetland setback, the green line, which is met under the current layout. All lots and structures remain well outside the areas of the slope stability concern identified in the geotechnical engineer report. The two proposed lots nearest to the slope crest are located more than 100 feet from the creek and approximately 60 to 90 feet from the crest. Additional building setbacks of approximately 5 to 10 feet from the property line further increase separation. Compliance with the construction recommends in the geotechnical report will help ensure slope stability is maintained. By protecting slope integrity, the proposed reduction would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare, and would not be injurious or adjacent properties. The property is effectively an infill site, surrounded by residential development on 3 sides and bounded by a creek to the north. These characteristics create significant constraints on the development of the 12-acre parcel for residential purposes, and allowed use under both zoning ordinance and the growth policy. The irregular and undulating nature of the stream bank produces a setback line that is narrow in some areas and much wider in others. At the narrowest point, the subdivision access street would fall within 200 feet setback. These conditions are unique to the property and are not generally applicable to similar situated parcels. An additional consideration is outlined in the variance application. According to the Montana Fish and Wildlife and Parks paper entitled Use of Building Setbacks and the Water Body Standards of Fish and Wildlife Recommendations for Subdivision Development in Montana, Justification and Rationale. The 200-foot setback recommendation, which served as the basis for the local subdivision regulation, is derived from a 150-foot vegetated buffer and a 50-foot building setback from the outer edge of that buffer. The paper defines a vegetated buffer as a natural, undisturbed strip of greenbelt along each side of a natural water body. While the flat grassy area on the bluff has some value, the lower lying areas along the stream, including the wetlands and riparian vegetation, represent a primary ecological concern. As stated in the variance application, the proposed layout preserves the riparian area while ensuring that all lots are located more than 50 feet from the top of bank, thereby meeting the intent of the recommendation. In addition, the land between the residential lots and the slope will be dedicated common area to be designed within the creek in mind as part of the landscape plan developed in coordination with the Parks Department. This approach further supports the intent of the buffer by maintaining separation from the riparian corridor and providing long-term stewardship of the area. Here's 2 pictures of the area, once again Ashley Creek, and then the flat area where they will be building on, if approved. As noted, there are unique physical conditions for the subject property. When the regulation is strictly applied, the regulation in conjunction with those conditions creates an undue hardship. Under the regulation, only streets crossing the creek would be allowed. So the South Meadows extension would be permitted, but the internal street would not fully meet the standard. In terms of lots impacted, over half are outside of the setback. Of those lots that would be less than 200 feet, most structures would be at or nearly at the 200-foot mark. Furthermore, the subdivision design brings the lots to the southern portion of the property to maintain a large setback as reasonably possible. The proposed lot lines in the subdivision are in places more than 200 feet and in some places less, due in large part of the irregular stream bank, but are intended to largely meet the intent of the regulation. Strict interpretation of the regulation would create an undue hardship rather than a mere inconvenience, and in this development of the site would be substantially impacted by rerouting the internal road to the rear of the property lines and existing homes, at least on the western end, and significantly reducing the number of homes in the subdivision without real reduction in infrastructure costs, which would increase the cost for both developer and future homeowners. The variance will not cause a substantial increase in public costs. There are no provisions of the zoning ordinance which would be affected by the variance. The regulation is not directly addressed in the growth policy, In general terms, however, the growth policy encourages an adequate supply and mix of housing that meets the needs of present and future residents in terms of cost, type, design, and location. It encourages development to occur near existing services, especially sewer, as well as infill locations. The natural environment chapter recognized the importance of minimizing the impact of development rather than prohibiting it and encouraging development that is compatible or enhances natural resource areas. The proposal attempts to strike a balance between those goals by creating a design which allows for reasonable development of housing that minimizes impacts on the creek and is consistent with the growth policy. Based on the foregoing, the requested variance satisfies the criteria stated in section 28.7.01, and the variance should be granted subject to substantial compliance with the application submitted and any related conditions of approval. Note, the road extending through is allowed and is part of a city easement. So right here, this road could, in the future, possibly become a road if down the road. So road and length variances. Section 28.3.14C of the subdivision regulations provides that dead-end streets shall not exceed 600 feet. Measured from the center line of the intersection to the center of the cul-de-sac, the proposed subdivision includes a single internal roadway measuring 870 feet using that standard. As a practical matter, block length corresponds directly to the length of the road. Under section 28.312A, block lengths must be between 250 and 600 feet. Under this proposal, the block length would increase to approximately 900 feet. This increase stems from the same site-specific conditions that affect the roadway. The original subdivision street length standard was derived from the Fire Department Standard of Operating Guidelines, the SOGs, and fire access, and that protection are primary purposes of that standard from a public health, safety, and welfare perspective. The fire department no longer uses SOGs as a governing standard. Instead, review is based on approved turnarounds, hydrant placement, and emergency access geometry. The fire department has reviewed the proposed subdivision layout and has no objection to the design. In addition to the cul-de-sac, the intersection with the extension of South Meadows Drive provides a hammerhead turnaround, satisfying emergency access needs. Critically, because the project includes over 30 dwelling units served by access points, the internal fire code requires residential fire sprinklers systems in all homes, providing a level of fire protection that exceeds what would exist under a shorter street without those systems. For those reasons, the variance does not create a detriment to public health, safety, or general welfare, and would not be injurious or other properties. The uniqueness of conditions. This parcel is an infill lot surrounded by residential development on three sides and bound by Ashley Creek to the north. These conditions significantly constrain the development of the 12-acre site for residential purposes and allowed use under the zoning ordinance and the growth policy. There are no reasonable opportunities to connect to surrounding rights of way that would provide a second access. These constraints are unique to this property and are not generally applicable to similar situated parcels. Hardship. As previously noted, this property has unique physical conditions, including creek frontage, topographical constraints, existing residential development patterns. When the road length standard is applied strictly and combined with these conditions, the result is undue hardship, not a mere inconvenience. If the regulation were applied literally, the road would be approximately 270 feet shorter, leaving a substantial undevelopable area and undermining the benefits of infill development. A shorter roadway would either, 1, reduce the density of the subdivision by 14 to 16 units, or 2, require further encroachments into the creek setback to require those lost units, neither which would provide any corresponding benefit to the public health, safety, or welfare. Strict enforcement would therefore materially impact the viable development of the site, satisfying the hardship criteria. Public cost. The requested variance will not cause a substantial increase in public cost. Consistency with zoning and growth policy. No provisions of the zoning ordinance would be affected by the variance. The road length regulation is not addressed directly in the growth policy. However, the growth policy generally encourages an adequate supply and variety of housing that meets the needs of present and future residents in terms of cost, type, design, and location. Development in these areas served by existing utilities and infrastructure, especially municipal sewer. Responsible infill development that makes efficient use of land within the urban service area. The proposed layout is consistent with these objectives. Conclusion: based on the foregoing, the requested variance for the cul-de-sac length and block length satisfy the criteria set forth in section 28.7.01. The variance should be approved subject to substantial compliance with the application and any related conditions of approval. Kalispell Planning Commission recommends that they adopt staff report KPP-25-04 as findings of fact and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the North Meadows subdivision preliminary plat, along with 3 requested variances, be approved subject to 32 listed conditions. Thank you, council. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer.
Questions for staff? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. As with the last one where there was that change in the condition in terms of the grouping of the driveways for the townhomes and not having that on this, if we did that with this one, would the lot lengths with snow plowing and stuff, would that work? I know it was determined it'd work with the previous one, but I'm wondering about this one, whether or not that would work.
These lots aren't as large as those.
So it'd be the same.
No, you would not. You would want it in this case, not the other case, because in the other case, the sublots were much larger. In this case, they wouldn't be.
Oh, they're not as large. Oh, I thought you were saying, okay. Because I do think, just a comment on that, I've seen some of our more recent developments of townhomes and those parking lots, when they're shared, it's just a mass of asphalt, and it's really ugly. So I actually prefer them being separated. I mean, I kind of know the reasons for it, but just aesthetically, they're really quite ugly when they're grouped together. But anyways, that aside, so, and then on the road extension, I know the road right of way is there. There's a possibility it's built, but general understanding it's not likely to be built. Is there a reason to extend the road beyond the turn? If we know it's likely not going to happen, if it does happen, they can put it in. Why extend that road beyond the turn?
So the layout of that serves as a hammerhead turnaround. So a fire truck, for example, could turn into the development and then back out and around. So it serves as a turnaround rather than a cul-de-sac would.
Does it need to be as long as it is to serve as a hammerhead? I mean, I don't know what that length is in the image. I can't, tell how long it is, but just wondering if it can be shorter.
Yeah, I don't have that in my notes. I don't know the dimensions of it, but I know it was reviewed by the fire department.
Okay. And then, what was the sound, scientific, and mitigation information that was provided by the applicant about wildlife movement and habitat within the riparian corridor that justifies the reduction in the buffer?
Besides sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, what was the sound, scientific, and mitigation information that was provided by the applicant about wildlife movement and habitat within the riparian buffer corridor that justifies the reduction in the buffer?
So there was a letter from Parks, Wildlife and Parks, to kind of confirm that it's just a standard that they've set, and through the city, we've set that as being a basis for us. And that's about it. It's in their report. They've submitted it through, they've got a letter from Fish and Wildlife.
What the letter from Fish and Wildlife was what again?
It just basically just confirms that so in this letter that you guys did receive, comment, the parcel just convoys that what the city of Kalispell's growth plan is, and it kind of confirms with us, verifying that they work with us, and a minimum 150 feet of vegetative plus additional feet of building, setbacks of 200, and then other bodies of water at minimum 100 feet. And it's basically just based on what that area is consistent of, and off the geotech report as well. So it's kind of a combination of Fish and Wildlife, the geotechnical report, and then the Ashley Creek setback, and then what we've defined as the Ashley Creek setback in our own.
So the letter is based on their recommendation of a buffer that our standard you mentioned is based off of, even though it doesn't quite meet what their recommendation is. But they're just saying that, they're just confirming, they're not justifying the reduction of the buffer in this letter.
They're just
They're not.
confirming that it's what the North Meadows is doing is okay.
No, that's not what it's saying.
I mean,
it's not what it's saying.
So developer may request reduction in setbacks listed in section 28.3.07B. So it's important to realize the city council, the previous city councils put this variance section into this particular, which is unique. At the time it was adopted, they wanted this to be put in there so that this was possible. So minimum setbacks, supporting riparian habitat, protect water quality. There's a number of things there, but it doesn't say anything as far as wildlife corridors. It doesn't say that in our own, the purpose, supporting riparian habitat. The green line is the riparian habitat, which there's no development in it. Protect water quality.
Riparian habitat is the 200 feet.
So I'm reading our own ordinance. Nowhere in here does it say purpose, protect wildlife corridors. We do have wildlife corridor maps. This particular is not even a mapped wildlife corridor. So it's a general standard. In urban areas, they look at things completely different than, say, the Swan Valley or West Valley, uninterrupted, non-urban areas. So I would say that in general, the riparian component would line up with the green line, which is not being impacted at all. So it's something to consider, but I know that people want to use the wildlife corridor. We've met with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks multiple times. We've been doing it with our growth policy map. It's actually something they would like to do, but they don't even have wildlife corridor maps in the valley in general. So I think to use wildlife corridor language when it's not any of our subdivision regulations, like we wouldn't be regulating to that because state law doesn't regulate it, our own regulations don't go to it. So that, I guess, if that answers your question, I don't know if it does, but I mean, like I said, the wildlife corridor and the setback, it's not just for that in particular. It's for a number of nuances. Like when you look at the variance section, it specifically states geotechnical report. Because the main concern in the valley is in regards to slopes and slope instability, which has actually happened in this particular area, has been noted, and the natural potentially of the failure and losing private properties.
So a wildlife corridor is habitat. A corridor is habitat. It's known that river corridors are known wildlife corridors and are crucial for habitat. We've had staff state that our standard is based on the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks document that you cited in your slide presentation. You have a one image from it. That's only one page of it. There's another page that talks about the reason for these buffers are wildlife habitat, water quality, and our code says that the full code that was partially cited there, that they can request a reduction of the setbacks with sound scientific information and reasonable mitigation to address potential impacts on that riparian corridor, the buffer, right? Period. The second sentence, in the case of bank stabilization, and I know staff has cited geotech reports specifically, that's specific to bank stabilization. It doesn't address wildlife habitat. It doesn't address water quality beyond bank stabilization issues. Geotech report shall be required. That is a separate sentence. That's not saying that the geotech meets the previous sentence standard of providing sound scientific information and reasonable mitigation to address potential impacts. The applicant has not provided any scientific information or reasonable mitigation to address wildlife habitat, wildlife corridors, water quality beyond the geotech report. We have a separate code, 28.0310, that is specific to geotech, that is already required and has the standards and all that. This is just repeating that of what's already in our code in a separate section. So
Council's discretion. Riparian habitat is mapped there in green.
the buffer is
Right.
riparian habitat.
Okay, the riparian habitat provided by the applicant is there in green for council's consideration, and that is the hydric soils, the riparian habitat. Riparian is different than wildlife corridor. Wildlife corridor could be anything in the valley floor. That's what I'm getting at. So in regards to this particular development, certainly setbacks, all that is something to consider, but as far as what they've provided, it's the green line.
Okay. I got into discussion, but I'll talk more.
Any other questions?
Like I said, just have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I see that this one from Fish and Game is for the apartment complex delivered back August 1st. Did they do an updated one for the housing development rather than, sorry.
They did not, but we can request that. I mean, there's the only changes. I mean, the old one you're gonna have, it was more houses, bigger. I mean, it would have affected the property a lot more.
Right.
Right. Where this, they're really trying to do minimal damage when it comes to it, and they're really trying to protect, if anything, what's there. And if you go out there on the site, you know, you might see a deer on the person's property across the street, but there's hardly any water there. It's you know, it's kind of dirty in the back. So if anything, that area would be cleaned up dramatically by this improvement.
Sure.
Mr. Dowd, question?
Thanks. I just, while reviewing public comment this weekend, I saw a pretty detailed email come in, reference this subdivision or this project. And you've addressed the 4 issues, or the 3 of the 4 issues that were on that. So the dead end street piece, and I don't know if a cul-de-sac is technically a dead end street or not. It is a cul-de-sac, you know, a cul-de-sac with a roundabout at the end. Is that a dead end street?
Would that be considered?
Well, I guess we would have to define what a dead-end street is. I mean, it doesn't go anywhere, so it definitely ends at the cul-de-sac, but you can turn around in the cul-de-sac and go out. So
Yeah, but
there is no outlet from that cul-de-sac area besides turning around in the cul-de-sac and going back out. So
Sure.
we
Yeah.
wouldn't sign it as a dead-end street because it's a cul-de-sac you can utilize and go around and go back out. So I wouldn't sign it as a dead-end street. It's a cul-de-sac that you can utilize, turn, and go back out.
Sure. Yeah, that was what I'm not. That's not my stick point.
Sorry.
I just know that you've addressed that. You addressed that with the fire department. They're cool with it, so I'm okay with that piece. The density and buildable land constraints, we were just talking about some of that, right? These are in reference to the public comment we got, by the way, which was extremely, you know, detailed, right? The water course setback requirements, we talked about those. The only thing we didn't talk about is there's a little stub right now of South Meadows that this will be connecting to. That little, and just from the drawing I see here, number 1, you're gonna have sidewalks that run up to that and just stop, right? because that little stub doesn't have sidewalks on it. It also appears that the street is much smaller than city standards, because when you get up to the development, it flares out and includes a larger street, which is our basic, street requirement. So that wasn't addressed at all in this. And do you know what I'm talking about with the little stub of South Meadows there? It's about two lots long before you get to the development.
Yes, I see it.
Okay, so, my question there is, I think in the past, when we've seen these come in like that, and it's such a short, space that we have said, okay, just put the sidewalks in there as well, because you only have to extend them another, like, I don't know, 100 feet or whatever it is. I didn't see anything addressing that at all, just to keep up with our street requirements, and I feel like I'm, channeling a little bit of, Phil here on this, because this tiny little part doesn't meet our city standards, right? I also, lived there for a long time, and right a couple blocks from there, and it's a very dangerous place in the morning with the fog, in the winter with the kids walking to school down South Meadows, and down whatever that other street is. Yeah, Bluestone. So I would at least like the ingress and egress to the complex to include sidewalks from that little stub at least. Was there any comment at the planning commission when they reviewed this about trying to work with the neighbors on that little stub to actually put in sidewalks or anything like that?
I got it.
Is that
So
something?
go ahead. It's always on site. So if council wanted to require sidewalks off-site, you're gonna have to make a finding in order to do that. The council does risk how far you go off-site. You gotta be able to make a finding in order to do that. That would be going out of the ordinary to go off a project site to require improvements like that. So if you do wanna do that, you would have to very carefully consider the findings to do that.
Sure, but we're only talking like 100 feet or whatever, right? It's not a huge.
That gets, sidewalks to nowhere gets brought up all the time, so it's how far do you go every time you do it? It's typically your property frontage and your property, that is the city standard. Going beyond that would not be the city standard, and it has not been what we typically do. So as far as precedent, that would actually be creating precedent to go off-site based off of our city policies and procedures we have in place now.
Correct. So that's the only stick point for me on this thing. I know we were pretty hard on the developer the first time. We were like, totally candid. This one is more in line with the character of the neighborhood. I like it a lot more. I am a little bit concerned about that little, area where you were talking about, where it goes off into, real close to the Ashley Creek. And I know we get a lot of hassle over Ashley Creek all the time for anything we do anywhere near it. But that little stub is kind of a stick point with me too. So anyway, I'm having some concerns about that specifically, but I do like this plan a lot better than the previous one. I'll just throw that out there. And I do want to see infill happen here. It's just, it's got to be the right infill.
Any other questions for staff? Public comment on resolution 6303.
Jacqueline Pipolo, 139 Rimrock Court. And first of all, Mayor, I want to thank you for your service to Kalispell. And Mr. Hunter, I want to say congratulations and good luck to you. And before I forget, in 2013, we moved on Rimrock Court and we had bear scat in our yard. I called Fish and Wildlife. I did not know I'd be here 12 years in the future. I would have taken the person's name down. I was told Ashley Creek is a wildlife corridor. Just want to get that on record. Okay, so bear with me, please. I had read this at the previous meeting, so the 200-foot setback for impaired streams includes the Flathead, Stillwater, and Whitefish Rivers, and Ashley Creek, was implemented as part of the City of Kalispell Design Standards on December 19, 2011 by Ordinance 1707. The regulation, and I hope you hear this part, the regulation requires a minimum 200-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark or the top of the stream bank if the mark is not discernible for impaired streams to help, okay, pay attention please, to help protect water quality and wildlife habitat. For other watercourses, different setback requirements such as 50 or 100 feet may apply depending on the classification. So it does say wildlife habitat. I called Montana DEQ in Kalispell and Helena, and I called the Flathead Conservation District. And upon hearing from them, I realized Ashley Creek is a heavily impacted stream. There are a lot of regulations protecting streams in Montana, and this developer, Mr. Foley, needs to make sure he is in compliance with the regulations protecting Ashley Creek. If the bed or banks are disturbed, if there are any physical alterations, the landowner, private person, must first obtain a 310 permit. This permit would be obtained and is required by the Flathead Conservation District so the board can review the future impact of the development. I do not know, I know I'm not allowed to ask questions, so I do not know if Mr. Foley has this 310 permit. But Montana National Streambed and Land Preservation Act, the 310 law, the National Streambed and Land Preservation Act is intended to protect and preserve streams and rivers and the lands adjacent to them. The law requires any individual or business proposing work in or near a perennial stream to apply for a 310 permit through their local conservation district. If this person's planning a project in or around a stream, the law pertains to him. The Flathead Conservation District administers 310 permits on over 600 streams within Flathead County. Because each of these streams are unique, they require their own special considerations for maintaining health and functions. 310 permits are required to ensure wise use of our national resources and prevent degradation of our streams. Any project that will physically alter or modify the stream, its bed, or immediate banks must have a permit. Since such stream in each project is different, permits are assessed on the ground during a site visit by district supervisors and fish, wildlife, and park staff. Again, I don't know if that was done, but I think that's very important. The Montana Natural Streambed and Land Preservation Act in 1975, also known as the 310 Law, codified at Title 75, Chapter 7, Part 1 of the Montana Code, is a state law that requires a permit for any private person or organization planning to work in or near a perennial stream or river. The purpose is to protect the stream from damaging projects while keeping soil erosion and sedimentation to a minimum. Key provisions. The 310 law requires a free 310 permit from the local conservation district for activities altering perennial stream beds or banks. Montana's 58 local conservation districts administer the law. The review process involves a site inspection and consideration of potential impacts on erosion, sedimentation, stream flow, water quality, and aquatic habitat. Decisions are made within 60 days of a complete application. Penalties for violation include fines and potential restoration requirements. An emergency provision allows necessary actions to safeguard life or property, requiring notification within 15 days. I thought of you. Stream access versus stream bed preservation. The act is different from the Montana Stream Access Law, which allows public recreational use of most waterways up to the ordinary high water mark, regardless of streambed ownership. However, the Stream Access Law does not permit crossing private land for access. And also, I do not know if he needs an SBA 124 permit. This is the Montana Stream Protection Act to protect and preserve fish and wildlife resources and to maintain streams and rivers in their natural or existing stage. And who must apply? Any agency or subdivision of state, county, or city government proposing a project that may affect the beds or banks of any stream in Montana. Many federal agencies also comply either via a memorandum of understanding or general agreement. Activities requiring a permit. Any project including the construction of new facilities or the modification, operation, and maintenance of an existing facility that may affect the natural existing shape and form of any stream or its banks or tributaries. Okay, application procedure. Any agency or unit of government planning a project must submit a notice of construction application to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, which has up to 30 days to review the application, perform an on-site inspection, and approve, modify, or deny the application. An application must be submitted for review not less than 60 days before the intended start of the construction, and there is no application fee. Okay, this is from the City of Kalispell, Montana Design Standards, which was partially read tonight. It's section 28.03.07, watercourse setbacks. Wherever a development is crossed by or is adjacent to a watercourse, the developer must mitigate the impacts of the development on the watercourse through the use of setbacks and limitations on adjacent development. This mitigation may be increased in areas of significant floodplain, adjacent wetlands, or for bank stabilization. Proposed lot boundaries would be located at or beyond the minimum setback. A, purpose. Number 1, supporting the riparian habitat. Number 2, protect water quality. Number 3, protecting the stream, river, channel, and banks. Number 4, maintaining an effective sediment filter, which helps maintain water quality. Number 5, protect adjacent property from natural watercourse morphology. B, minimum setbacks. Number 1, a minimum 200-foot setback shall be provided for impaired streams. Currently, Ashley Creek and the Whitefish, Stillwater, and Flathead River. Number 2, a minimum 100-foot setback shall be provided for Spring Creek and Trumbull Creeks. Number 3, a minimum 50-foot setback shall be provided for all other watercourses, not impaired streams, or intermittent or ephemeral streams. Ashley Creek is not inferior stream. Ashley Creek runs all year round. The USGS 7.5 minute quadrangular map shall be used as a reference, followed by on-site inspection by planning department staff to assist in determining if setbacks are warranted. The watercourse must have a defined bed or channel and associate riparian vegetation to be considered for the minimum setback. A swell does not constitute an intermittent or ephemeral stream. And again, Ashley Creek runs all year long. It's not ephemeral. Also, I just want to say prohibited uses. This is under E within the setback. 1 is fill material. 2 is parking lot development. 3 is streets except for watercourse crossings. 4 is residential, commercial, or industrial primary and accessory structures. And this complete, I think this is F. This is the complete paragraph. The developer may request a reduction in the setbacks listed in subsection B, and B is, if I understood this correctly, B talks about 1, 2, and 3. And number 1 is the minimum 200-foot setback is Ashley Creek because it's impaired. Providing the planning department with sound scientific information and reasonable mitigation to address potential impacts. In the case of bank stabilization, a geotechnical report shall be required. The review and approval, conditional approval, or denial of the requested reduction shall be in accordance with section 28.07.01, the variances. So here we have the variances, which he partly read. I'm so sorry for reading so much, but this is important to me. A is the hardship. The city council may grant variances from Articles 3 and 4. These regulations, when because of their particular physical surrounding shape or topographical conditions of a specific property, which this property, I wish you could go view it, because this project, I'm really glad they lowered it down to townhouses, but it needs to be compatible, and you need to have the setbacks. And I'm really hoping you won't give this developer his 100-foot setbacks. Okay, so the strict compliance would result in undue hardship, and it would be hardship to Ashley Creek. It would not be essential to line to the public welfare. Such variances must not have the effect of nullifying the intent and purpose of these regulations. The governing body should not approve variances unless it makes findings based upon evidence in each specific case that, number one, the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or general welfare, or injurious to adjoining properties. But again, it would be, I believe, in my opinion, detrimental to Ashley Creek and the wildlife, because I was told it was a wildlife corridor. Number two, the conditions of which the request for a variance is based are unique to the property on which the variance is sought and are not applicable generally to other property. Three, because of the particular physical surrounding shape or topographical conditions of the specific property involved, an undue hardship to the owner result as distinguished by a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of these regulations is enforced. It might be an inconvenience, but if he has 22 and someone just mentioned 16 or 14, Mr. Foley still can develop the land, and he can honor these ordinances that say 200-foot setback. Number four, the variances will not cause a substantial increase in public cost. 5, the variances will not in any manner vary the provisions of any adopted zoning regulations or growth policy. And then it goes on to procedures, conditions, statements of facts. I won't read those. And then I just want to mention in Chapter 28, Subdivision Regulations, Article 3, Design Standards, 28.03.12 about the blocks. Blocks shall be designed to assure traffic safety and ease of traffic control and circulation, to accommodate the special needs of the use contemplated and take advantage of the limitations and opportunities of the topography. Number 1, blocks shall be wide enough to allow for 2 tiers of lots, except where essential to provide separation of residential development from traffic arteries or to overcome specific disadvantage of topography, and orientation. Number 2, block length shall be not less than 250 feet or more than 600 feet. And I couldn't find anywhere where that could be changed. Number 3, right-of-way not less than 200 feet wide for pedestrian walk trails shall be required where deemed essential to provide. A, access to common facilities such as school, park, open space, rivers, streams, and lakes, or B, when necessary, to break up excessively long blocks in excess of 600 feet in length that are allowed to address unusual topography or road situations. And I want to also point out, if you decide to let this developer have his 100 feet, then you really need to change in your Montana standards where it talks about the developer may request reduction in setbacks in subsection B, because then you nearly clearly say this also will include impaired streams. Because all it says under number 1, a minimum 200-foot setback shall be provided for impaired streams. Currently Ashley Creek and the Whitefish, Stillwater, and Flathead River. Also, I don't know where that little road down the future maybe popped in. I don't believe that's true, because you have to build a bridge to go over Ashley Creek. It's private property, and maybe there's eminent domain, I don't know, but that's a big project. And that little nub you're talking about, well, actually, the road will actually be in, I think there's 2 or 4 houses, and then the little nub, the road will be in their front yard. So anyway, I thank you all for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again. My name is Ricky Moffat. I live at 147 Rimrock Court. And let's get you pulled up here. Just mine will be really quick tonight. I think everyone's hammered at home. The problem really isn't the development. Nobody, in my opinion, has the right to be upset that someone wants to develop their own land that they own. The problem here is that the highest amount of encroachment would be where it's really the most critical point of the site, and that's where Ashley Creek bends. The road would dead end into Ashley Creek, and there's already been proven structural and property damage via a landslide that's occurred on that area on Rimrock Court. And if it's okay with you, I just have a few photos of what that looks like. May I approach you with these to distribute? There's And the photos just show the backyard that had the landslide. That is exactly opposite of where they're asking for the biggest variance there on the 200-foot setback. A geotechnical report can't and really shouldn't take the place for mitigation of the creek or protection of nearby properties when there's historical evidence of the need to keep that minimum of the 200-foot setback. And per Mr. Nygren, the interim city manager, at the last planning commission meeting just about a month ago on November the 12th, the 200-foot setback is in place for impaired streams, which Ashley Creek is defined as, but it's up to City Planning Commission and City Council to determine if the variance requests are appropriate. So just because you can ask for it, this isn't his words, this is mine. Just because you can ask for it, it doesn't mean that it's the smart thing or the wise thing to do to grant it. Kate Walker of the City Planning Commission, in her own words, she said the lot design and road alignment could have been done better and in a more conscientious way. It seems too much emphasis was put into the number of units and lots. And then again, from this same exact parcel of land that we're talking about, we've already visited this in September. So the same exact site, although it was a different development, Councilmember Mr. Hunter, you said that if the 200-foot buffer and sidewalks were upheld, I would feel differently on the matter. So I feel like we're all still on the same alignment with that. The 200-foot setback was one of the major reasons for City Council to unanimously deny the project the first go-around. The developer would understand this if they attended any of the meetings, but I don't think they have ever since its inception, and I don't believe that they're here today. If they are, it would be great if they'd come forward and answer questions. I believe there is a way to work through all of this, though, and to work with the real property that's in place, uphold the ordinances, and protect everyone's interests. The townhomes are perfect. We're all pleased as punch that it would be townhomes and not a big apartment complex. The owner of the land has developed almost all of the properties around the area. He's been the original owner. And so it's just a little hard to swallow that the argument for an extreme hardship is in place because he did it to himself. It's all been his own doing. Please uphold the ordinances and standards set by the City of Kalispell, recommendations of FWP, and your own moral compasses, as evident in the last City Council meeting regarding this exact plot of land just a few months ago. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, Teresa Karst, 1855 North Vilmar Drive. Here I am petrified again. The letter from the FWP states this parcel includes several hundred feet of frontage along Ashley Creek, an important movement corridor for wildlife. And it goes into more, but it was obviously stated in the letter from FWP. I feel like all the comments and letters opposing the previous proposal for this piece of land apply here and need to be considered. There's still no sidewalks for school children's safety going to school. There's still the only one exit. There are still PFAS in the water supply, and it still doesn't make sense to have an overflowing development up against Ashley Creek. If you own land along a creek in Montana, you know there are going to be restrictions for any land alterations or constructions that you do. And you know the reasons: to protect wildlife and resources, and to protect people, to protect your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews. If you own land used by waterfowl in Montana, you know there are going to be restrictions. If you own land within flood zones, you know if there will be it'll be dictated what alterations you can and cannot do. This is not a hardship. It's not a hardship to follow the same rules as everyone else. It's not a hardship to follow the rules that come with owning a piece of land with a creek. A piece of land with a creek is more valuable than a piece of land without a creek. The FWP's recommendations take legal precedent for any negative consequences from this development. A developer not abiding by FWP recommendations will be on the hook for any future consequences. This proposal has the buffer as low as 30 feet. We talked about the FWP recommendations. I think we've gone over that. But noting that 150 feet of the vegetation is to be maintained for any development, not just a building, including buildings, roads, and even trails. They recommend the 150 feet. We've talked about it already being compromised. West Slope cutthroat and bull trout are already sensitive species, and they use the creek. Cumulative effects would just continue to rise. 30 feet is not acceptable. 100 feet is not acceptable. Montana law recognizes that the state has a fiduciary duty to protect and conserve natural resources. Have homes and trails been built closer to creeks? Yeah, but we've learned since then. It's not a hardship to follow the rules and protect wildlife and to protect humans. Someone on the board made a blanket statement that a landowner should be able to do what they wish with their land. But the truth is that people are greedy, and they will harm others to make a buck. That's how planning boards and city councils came about. Humans need rules so the pursuit of the almighty dollar doesn't outstrip the rights of others, the rights for clean water and a safe neighborhood. Adjusting this to be appropriate for the neighborhood and to have the appropriate barriers for Ashley Creek is not a hardship. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Stephen Husky. I live at 1955 Bluestone Drive. My house is right there by the end of the cul-de-sac. And we don't just see a deer. We have seen families of deer. We have seen bald eagles. I saw a coyote chase a deer behind my house in this development. And the second paragraph of the handout, this parcel includes several hundred feet of frontage along Ashley Creek, an important movement corridor for wildlife. In addition, Ashley Creek and its streamside vegetation and associated wetlands provide habitat for numerous species of wildlife, including white-tailed deer, coyotes, waterfowl, raptors. We have to go out with our dogs because bald eagles sometimes circle our house looking for a snack, meaning our pets. And that's without the encroachment, without crowding them out of their habitat into people's yards. I opened my garage door, and it wasn't just a deer. There were 3 deer in my front yard that ran because I opened the garage door. That's more wildlife than anyone cares to admit except the people that live there. We're the ones that see it. We're the ones that deal with it already, and putting this many houses this close to the creek within 200 feet, a bear's just going to look at it as, you know, you're on my property, here I come. And now I'd like to read a statement that I had prepared. First of all, I would like to thank the council for listening to our concerns. I do realize the property owner and the developer do have the rights to build on the area in North Meadows. That is not our concern. We are just not comfortable with the specific accommodations that are being asked for. I fear the building too close to an unpredictable water source is just not wise. If the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks feels that 200 feet from each side of this water source is necessary, I believe that we should follow accordingly. I think it's irresponsible to not do what is needed to protect wildlife and also people. Building so close to an area referred to as a bear highway doesn't give me a good feeling, nor does building too close to a water source on land already labeled a wetland for a good reason. Limits and rules are made for a reason. I believe that they should be followed. I would hate to look back someday and wish things had been handled differently. Once something is done, it cannot be undone. You stated that yourself. Well, once they build the house, are we going to go back and change our minds and tell them to tear it down? Once it's there, it's there. And the damage is done. I think it opens a can of worms that could result in future developers asking to bend the rules because it has already been done for one. You did it for them, do it for me. Unless the council is ready to change the rules for all, it's not a wise move in my opinion. And of course, it leads me back to the right to this area in question, Ashley Creek. Makes this land not quite like other land in the area. So please make the right decision and enforce the rules and regulations that are already in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Mayor, Council. Mark Top, 107 Denver Avenue, just right down the road. I do like this a lot better than what we were here to discuss this summer. I was very surprised at how unaesthetic this is looking. Absolute maximization of every attainable loophole and dollar per square foot, which is important. We understand that, but it's atrocious. I didn't catch the number of additional trips per day during this presentation, so I would like to know that. That was a heavy factor for why we were so upset about the apartments. There's a lot of kids walking up and down that road. Sid discussed the fog, the ice, the winter conditions. No sidewalks is a huge thing still, so we definitely need to go over how many additional trips per day this thing might be. I don't have a laser pointer, but I would put a little roundabout in there or something at the beginning and stay away from the buffer zone as much as possible and maybe lose a few lots, but I feel like it could be done better, and I'm not an engineer, so what do I know? I wish they'd put it to bed about extending the road to Sunnyside. That is an incredibly steep decline, a huge elevation difference. A bridge is going to be millions of dollars to build there. That's probably never going to happen. It's just not a feasible. It's just not a feasible thing. So it's going to be ingress egress in that one spot forever, unless they tear houses down at the very end of the cul-de-sac and plumb them onto North Belmar and then onto Bluestone in that direction. I would like to know if the lots are going to be sold to third parties for building. That's going to make a huge difference on the draw out of the timeline for the construction and the disturbances that come along with that, which we discussed at the last city council meeting on the apartments. If it's kind of a slow roll for construction process, it's going to have a lot less disturbance for the neighborhood and the residents and the wildlife and all that goes with that. Or are they going to build them all out in lieu of the apartments so that they can just rent them forever? That's a consideration as well. That's going to be a much faster pace, much more impact on the neighborhood. It is definitely better than the apartments, but the density is still pretty high, I think. That still has a huge effect on the traffic that's going to be up and down Bluestone, where there are kids walking to the park. I think the added burden of the school is also still a factor with this density. Depending on who moves in there, obviously that's going to be variable. I will say allowing crawl spaces is still a really bad idea. If I would have known what the impacts of that area were going to be, I would have built slab on grade, which I think is the only thing. That's the only thing that should be allowable there is slab on grade. People have had lots of problems with the crawl spaces too. Sure, you're not flooding your house where you live, but it's still a factor. You still get mold, a lot of moisture, humid, musty, gross air. Ultimately, when this goes forward, I think what could really be done to mitigate some of the concern with people walking up and down Bluestone is to make sure that that park space, that common space, is accessible to the neighborhood, because that's going to alleviate a lot of the need for people to go to the other park. If there is common space that could be used there, maybe a little playground, maybe a little tiny dog park, probably not anything like what's on Ashley or Ashley Park. but it would mitigate some of that flow to those parks if there was a common space there as well. So overall, we're definitely moving in the right direction, but the density is still really pushing the envelope, and I would like to see it a little bit better of a design and a little bit more feasible. So thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Mayor, council, at the risk of being the one and only voice in favor of this subdivision, I do want to speak. My name is Keisa Davison, again, for the record. I am speaking in support of this application and the requested variance. We talk a lot about protecting our environment, and I think we also need to remember to look at the bigger picture, that when we make infill developments difficult to build, difficult to develop, difficult to move forward, we actually are encouraging sprawl. And with sprawl comes not only more impacts on our natural environment, but we're talking about massive hurdles for septic systems. We're talking about traffic issues, and ultimately the loss of agricultural land and an impact on our beautiful, beautiful community that none of us want to see. So your job is tricky, and looking at the bigger picture and finding that balance is critical. I believe, based on the information that the developer has provided, not only in this iteration, but also the first iteration and the numerous planning council or planning commission meetings, I believe that this developer has achieved this balance, and I would encourage you to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. They have their hand up. Okay, anyone else in the room want to give comment? Go ahead.
Toby, you can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, thank you. Toby McIntosh, Jacola Engineering and Architecture, 2250 Highway 93 South. I apologize I couldn't be there in person tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I had to travel for work, so unfortunately I was not able to be there. So I appreciate you taking my comment online. I will try and keep it brief. I know we visited on this project a lot earlier this summer. Couple things on the South Meadows stub that was referenced is part of the transition you're seeing is the South Meadows existing stretch meets a local street pavement width. It's approximately 30 feet. And the transportation plan goes to, I believe, a minor collector, which is a wider section. So part of that transition is going from a more robust road section. In terms of the extension beyond the street that goes internal to the subdivision, something that I feel is part of the design process and engineering review with Public Works and Fire, we'll be discussing how close that extension gets to the top of bank. I think what was touched on a little bit is it was to achieve a fire turnaround that meets the hammerhead requirements for fire code, but also trying to balance the, how close it gets with the recognition that the right of way to extend north is already in the city's ownership. One of the other things that I wanted to talk a little bit about is the riparian area is limited to the slope bank. From the top of bank internal is largely a grass rangeland that will be largely left open and coordinated with Parks and Rec Department in terms of improvements, and that open space will help mitigate the existing riparian area that's on the slope of the Ashley Creek corridor. Part of that mitigation, there's rules in place with stormwater. There's going to be the review from the Parks and Rec Department on meeting the parkland requirement, but also providing a buffer to that stream. I think one of the public comments talked about the 310 permits, and lots of the elements with that is that those are permits that you would be applying for after obtaining your entitlements. And the entitlements is this preliminary plat. So there's lots of permit approvals that will need to be obtained from the DEQ, potentially the 310, the Conservation District, construction, stormwater, pollution prevention plans. Those are the sorts of things that you don't do until you have the entitlement process in hand, which I believe most of us are aware of. In terms of the Rimrock situation, it's not quite an apples to apples. Some of the conditions there included uncontrolled fill placed basically on top of the existing slope. I think we talked about that a little bit this past summer. So the stability and the separation from the bank is something that isn't taken lightly and will be continued to review during the engineering plan development with the city. In terms of the 200-foot setback versus the 100, I think it's worth pointing out that the 200-foot setback where South Meadows extends into the property is about 45 feet from the property line. That's not even wide enough to fit the city street through and stay outside the 200-foot setback. So when you actually look at the map, the majority of the lots are either meeting or very close to meeting the 200-foot setback. And I think the undue hardship is the fact that we physically couldn't construct the street and stay out of the 200 feet. And so I think one of the comments during planning board was about not being creative with the road and how it came into the site. There's a couple things that come to play from the engineering standards. One is street intersections need to be as close to 90 degrees as possible. The other thing is the distance from the Bluestone Drive and our new intersecting street. There are standards that talk about distances there, and I think Public Works actually noted with the minor arterial or the, I apologize, I can't remember if it was a minor arterial or minor collector, but that separation would typically be larger. But in this case, that would put you north of the creek and not within our property. So I think the intent is we are applying for the variance as they're allowed in the rules and providing information to help justify that. I think that largely covers my comment. I'm here to obviously answer any questions you may have. I appreciate your consideration. And again, sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, and look to council for a motion on resolution 6303. Is it Pink Floyd? Is there anybody out there? Is that the wall? I'm trying to remember.
Still not it. It's lost. Hold on.
You have it, Mr. Dowd?
I can't motion for something I'm going to vote against.
Oh, I've got it.
You got it?
Yeah, got it. Thank you, Your Honor. I move resolution number 6303, a resolution conditionally approving the preliminary plat of North Meadows subdivision described as a tract of land in the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 19, township 28 north, range 21 west, PMM, Flathead County, Montana, and more particularly described as Exhibit A.
Second.
Okay, motion second, discussion. Mr. Dowd?
Thanks. I have a discussion item, and this is for Jonna, just to clarify the very first project that came through with this. I had to recuse myself from because I met with the neighbors about it. This one, I've had no contact with them, but it's the same area. I just want your opinion on whether I can vote on this or I should recuse.
does it bring forth to you the same issues that you met with the neighbors about? Are you taking those into consideration? Because I think that it's your conscience be your guide, Mr. Dowd. If it's things that you learned in that meeting that have any influence on your decision here, then yes, you should recuse yourself.
The only thing that comes to mind is the fog and the no sidewalk thing, which I knew from living there years ago. So.
I mean, I think that you've got to figure out in your own mind whether that meeting is influencing your opinion or your decision on this vote, and whether that also, not only just in your mind, but the appearance of it as well. We talk about the appearance of impropriety and what the public perceives. So I would keep both of those in mind in making your decision.
I am, and I don't believe that is the case. I don't feel like an ethical issue being able to vote on this next new project. I have had no contact since that meeting, so and nothing in that previous. The previous one was all about the sudden change in density. So
why don't we? I'd like to review that policy that we have that we talked about previously. Can you hold off on making any discussion points while I look at that and we'll readdress it?
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter, I imagine you have a couple items.
Yeah, I'll be talking for a while, so there'll be plenty of time to address this. So I want to talk a little bit about riparian areas and why they're important, and why a buffer like this, a setback like this exists, and why Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
Cliff notes?
Well, Jonna needs time. She needs time.
But I know you're going to be making motions to amend.
Well, sure. That part will be quick. So, riparian zones, when you look at wildlife use, wildlife abundance, wildlife diversity, they're found around water, they're found around river corridors, wetlands, and so forth. It's also, river corridors are called the wildlife travel superhighways, because when they get around, they're going along these river corridors to move through the valley. Yes, there are other wildlife corridors that elk might use to cross the valley or whatever that aren't along corridors, is true, but nothing matches river corridors, wetlands in terms of the abundance of use of wildlife, the diversity of wildlife you'll find there, and that's why there is special protections for these areas as opposed to other areas. And so if you take, we heard a reference to a coyote or a fox or, a bear or a cougar. If they're moving through these areas, one, if it's a corridor, it's still habitat, because as we heard, a coyote chasing deer in this area, that coyote probably didn't live there, it was moving through. But when it's moving through somewhere, it's using that area as habitat to hunt, to rest, to drink, to find shade from the sun, to sleep. Corridors are habitat. And so the fox, the cougar, the coyote, whatever, the reason you have a buffer from these corridors, a setback, is because a lot of these animals, not deer, but other animals, don't like to be near human activity. They get scared away. And so you need a buffer, you need space between human activity in their residence and their, yards from where these wildlife will be found. And that, if you look at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks recommendation that staff admits, we built our code around, it is based on a vegetated buffer. The whole thing being vegetated. This isn't all vegetated. And if you don't have vegetation, that means the visual contact between the wildlife and the people and the noise and the impacts is actually greater, and so the distance should actually be more. Without the vegetation, you should actually increase your buffer. And also that recommendation, we don't follow the recommendation because the recommendation for rivers is actually 300 feet, not 200 feet, 250 feet with a 50-foot setback. And we are tying impaired streams to the rivers in our code, which Ashley Creek is. So if we were actually following Fish, Wildlife, and Parks recommendation, we'd have a 250-foot buffer with a 50-foot setback rather than 200 feet. Instead, we're proposing here to go down all the way to 100 feet. But, and the same is true for birds. If you look at birds, you know, the songbirds and stuff, you go to a riparian area, there's going to be a greater diversity, a greater abundance, and that's the key value of it. Now, we look at our code, 28.0307, and as was cited in the public comment, A, it lists 5 purposes for the setback. Only one of them does geotech have anything to do with. That's number 3, protecting stream or river channel and setback and banks. So you're protecting the banks with a geotech setback. That's the only one the geotech study applies to. The other 4, geotech study has nothing to do with. Now, number 5, the watercourse morphology, that deals with the 100-foot floodplain. So if you're outside the 100-foot floodplain, then you're taking care of that. But there still remains 3 that the setback addresses: riparian habitat, water quality, and maintaining a filter to maintain that water quality. So then when we go to section F about scientific studies to support justifying a different standard than 200 feet, we don't have them. We do not have any scientific information to address those other 3 purposes of the setback in our code. And geotech study does not cut it. So it doesn't meet 28.0307B1, which is the 200-foot setback, or F, the part of the code that allows you to reduce that setback. It does not meet either of those. So now I will do my motion. I will move to add a conditional approval, or I guess remove the variance. How do I do this? Reject the variance of reducing the buffer?
I don't know what your intention is, so it depends on what language you're looking. Is the intention to remove, like, apply 200-foot setback? Okay, let me give you a little context to that. The 200-foot setback line is that black line. You are making the property undevelopable. The city is liable, just compensation, looking at a potential regulatory taking if you were to do something like that without sound scientific evidence to do that. So that is the world I'm putting you in. That is why we have to weigh all these variables as staff, what our rules are, what the intention of the rules are. Wildlife keeps getting mentioned. We looked at all the wildlife maps that are going to be looked at. Everything that's being said is not mapped. There's, yes, wildlife, the river is yes, we all understand that water generally, but the reality is Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has not mapped any of that. It is not important wildlife corridor, it's not important wildlife habitat, based off of all the maps that we've looked at and that we use to provide the findings for doing such a staff report. So if council were going to use that as a basis, you're going to need to make a finding in order to do that.
I just did.
I'm just saying, that's what I'm telling you. So, but a 200-foot setback makes a property undevelopable. So if that's the route you want to take, just be aware that you'll have to.
But it makes it undevelopable because of the street, correct?
It's because of our setback.
No, but because, like,
You can't go on the setback.
well, it can if it's crossing rivers under a code, but you're saying that it's undevelopable because we wouldn't be able to get the street in to develop it.
Correct.
So I'm willing to, apply the 200-foot setback except for that which is necessary for the street to access the site. So you would
In that
make,
case, you're removing the western lots and then 4 or 5 of the other lots.
yes. So you would basically come onto the property, take a hard right turn on the street. There would be some portion of that street that would dip over the 200-foot buffer, but you would not make the turn, way down there by the 100-foot buffer. You'd take as soon as you can, a turn.
Once again, we're starting to get into engineering standards and such, which that wouldn't meet. You can't just curve, there's radiuses that need to be met, there's distances from certain streets, there's lot depths that need to be met, for example, a minimum lot depth, because there's minimum lot size. So like, you start to get into a lot of nuances when you start trying to design a site, which we typically don't try to do, because like I said, there's a number of reasons it ended up that way. It's not because staff wanted to or whatnot, it's how it fitted. But yeah, there's a minimum separation between Bluestone and that street because of their classification. So you've got that to consider. You've got fire turnaround setback. You got a lot of things to consider as to why it turned out that way. So kind of there's a ripple effect with everything you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it does change it enough that it probably has to come back. I mean, but we have all these we have variances on the block length. We have the variances. We could have variance on the length from Bluestone. Like we could make variances to make it work with a minimal impact on the 200-foot buffer. You know, we could see that. We're not seeing those variances. But anyways, I do think that, I mean, I'm willing to offer that up, but I do think it changes enough that we should be having something come back to us anyways. And so I'm just going to vote against this because, it creates too many changes to apply the 200-foot buffer. And I just think it should come back and we can look at those variances and adjustments with the street. I guess I'm not amending because I just, it's a waste of time. I'm just gonna vote against it. I encourage everybody else to vote against it too.
Ms. Tallman?
I'm not gonna be supporting this. I stand with Ashley Creek. I would like to continue with the 200-foot buffer. Thank you.
I have more information
Oh,
for Mr. Dowd.
Mr. Dowd,
If I
okay.
may interrupt.
We're gonna pause this moment and
Sure.
go to Mr. Dowd again.
Okay, so what your council policy talks about is the appearance of impropriety. And it talks about, even if it doesn't implicate a specific conflict of interest, the participation does not look or feel right, the public official has probably encountered an appearance of impropriety. That's what directly out of what the council policy says. So in my mind, we're not talking about if it looks right to the neighbors. We're talking about whether it looks right to somebody who has an interest in your vote, which would be the developer, and whether the developer would feel that that meeting on the prior project, but on the same property, would look right or feel right. And it's my opinion that you have an issue there.
Okay, yeah, I thought I'd bring that up just before we entered into discussion, and I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing to respond to the comment. There's nothing in our code that says we're going to apply the 200-foot standard only if a map shows up in a Fish, Wildlife, and Parks wildlife area. That's not in our code. So our code says we apply a 200-foot buffer, and you have to justify not applying it. And we don't have any justification for not applying it. So the idea that we need a map from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to identify this as a special wildlife area is not correct and would render the whole code basically useless because Fish, Wildlife, and Parks doesn't make very many maps like that. I've tried to get them to make maps on elk corridors and they don't have the staff to do it.
Yeah, I think the question is, what's the findings of fact?
Yeah, I laid that out, like the importance of riparian areas, the
is
reasons for
in
them.
In the absence of the maps from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, do you have the facts to deny?
We don't, it doesn't meet our code. We don't need.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I know your position.
Yeah, okay. Getting worked up.
Other discussion on the motion. I guess one question I have would be the developer working with parks. And one of the comments is it's the grassland. Essentially, Mr. Hunter, you're looking at the grasslands. Okay, it's because it's mostly grass down to where there's the cover. Is there a way to mitigate with having the developer put in additional cover, shrubbery, et cetera, to create that buffer? So it's not that
But the
immediate.
200-foot is based on vegetated. So even if you put in vegetated, it should still be 200 feet. In fact, it should be 300 feet based on Fish and Wildlife Park's recommendation.
Well, other than,
500.
or other than Fish and Game in this letter said 200 for perennial streams.
Okay, Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm actually with Mr. Hunter on much of this. And I agree with public comment. I think we're opening Pandora's box. We do it for one, we have a nightmare. Once we start breaking rules like this, and this is substantial, I'll be voting no, and I agree with what Mr. Hunter said in many ways.
Okay, other discussion?
No real point talking it. I mean,
Right.
I have things I could say, but it's not going to matter. So I don't think we're breaking rules. There's variances. We have developers ask for variances all the time. We're not setting a precedent here.
On a third of.
But my point is I'm not looking to get into an argument with anybody about it. This people are just going to be where they're going to be on it. And I respect that. That's fine.
Okay. Mr. Dowd, are you abstaining?
I am recusing myself
Gonna
from this.
recuse yourself, okay. Any
guess
other
I-
discussion on the motion?
I guess I would just say I look at this as we've already done those variances. There's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, just on this map that have already been granted those variances on the same piece of property in there. I kind of look at this as this is a use of that land, and it does fit what I think. I also do agree with you, Mr. Hunter, that you know, the wildlife being there, but I could say I got a lot of wildlife at my house that goes right through a neighborhood that's more congested than this. So I get it. It is away from the creek. My mom and stepdad live on Ashley Creek up the way. And I can speak to how it's impaired before it even gets anywhere near the city. So I think that this makes it doable in my mind to be able to do this. And by the way, we have to approve this even for them to attempt to look at a 310 permit. There's still a lot that happens after this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it very well could come down that they look at it and go, you know what? No, you won't be able to do it.
They'd only need the 310 if they're crossing the creek with the bridge.
Right.
Yeah, not for the development.
Correct.
Any other discussion? A roll call vote.
Counselor Dowd is recused. Counselor Dahlman,
Resounding no.
Counselor Fisher,
No.
Counselor Hunter,
No.
Counselor Nunley,
Yes.
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Really, Mr. Dowd? Thanks.
You're welcome.
I don't like it, but I think in all reality, I have to say aye. It's a bitter pill. Aye.
Okay.
Okay,
I didn't hear.
back in, we got one thing. Let me grab this.
It would have.
I'm gonna go a little wonky, Mr. Dowd. Remember our Robert's Rules of Order issue of past?
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna go a little wonky with you again on Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
Robert, Rules of Order allow us to amend something previously adopted in the meeting. And a second is needed when this motion's made. And the 2/3 vote is required to make the amendment. I would like to amend something previously adopted, it's the official process, and amend ordinance 1948 to add the item 3 to section 27.33.010, general provisions that states, quote, all changes made to section 27.33 through ordinance 1948 shall apply only to conditional use permits granted after January 15, 2026.
Aye. Second.
So we failed to pick this up. We were most of the way through voting. And I thought this was a better way to pick it back up versus just pushing reset. So I think it's important to go back and add that date in moving forward. We've done it in the past where we've had amendments to the language. I think it's important to do it here as well, because I think it removes some contentious points potentially, but it also clarifies this is it going to understand some of the arguments against for having this apply to everything. But there is a revocation process still allowed on everything prior to this. This is just the ball field moving forward. So I'd offer that amendment. You granted
The second, yeah.
Mr. Graham. Any discussion on that? And all this does is amend the previous passed ordinance, inserts that language.
And I'm gonna insert myself here for just a moment, to give you a little bit of legal advice going forward. I got my Latin wrong earlier. Ex post facto means that we can't apply previous to previous CUPs. Regardless of that fact, this makes it very crystal clear. We are talking about January 15, 2026 going forward. So, staff encourages it.
So it's just clarifying, it's not changing, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It adds clarifying language that it only applies to CUPs granted after January 15th of 2026.
Any discussion? Have a roll call vote.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
No.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Counselor Carlson?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. Consideration on that. City manager report, Mr. Nygren.
Short, we've had a couple short meetings, so made up for tonight. But executive session this Wednesday, and we'll be having a work session next Monday regarding the naming policy. Just got brought up with the Dan Johns Kalispell Youth Athletic Complex, so we'll look at starting that discussion and hopefully get some direction to staff. That's it.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Your Honor. This has been keeping me awake at night, and I know we've already discussed it. The $6.2 million shop I know is desperately needed from our tour up front. I know prices have gone up. It just shocks me, the $600,000 up front. I hope there's a lot of value engineering on that. They built the Edmund Fitzgerald for $8.2 million. So I'm thinking there's gotta be some savings that can be done here. I know it's much different than the shops I've built for much smaller rigs, but it seems so excessive. But a couple council members have reminded me how much costs have gone up, but a $6.2 million just seems so outrageous. But yet I do see the desperate need, and I just hope there's, and I know how hard you work at this, you all, but value engineering to get the best you can for hopefully a lower amount. I don't know where it came from, an original report, but it seems very, very high, and I just hope we work hard to get the biggest bang we can for the buck and maybe leave a little on the table from that engineering estimate. That's it.
Mr. Fisher, anything? Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was going to talk about it during one of our last items there about the conditional use permits and, what it would look like about, if it came down to eliminating them or whatever. Because there's a discussion there, I think, perhaps. But the way I think it's important to look at that is, you keep the underlying zone the way it is, and then all of the uses permitted under conditional use permit go away. You don't just get rid of the language conditional use permit and leave the uses for the conditional use permit and basically bake it into the underlying zone, basically expanding what the zone can be used for. So I just wanted to get that out there that if that ever comes up as that would be my recommendation, is if it came up as a discussion at some point, it would be, to me, I think it would be leaving the underlying zone alone. And then, I mean, you probably, there might be some of the conditional uses that would fit into the underlying zone, but not just baking them all in and being like, okay, they're all gone. So I had that on my mind.
I guess I would say, yes, I agree with you, Jed. Let's find the cheapest way we can do it with the most amount, but please don't follow the examples of Edmund Fitzgerald, because we all remember where that sits.
Mr. Dowd?
I just wanted to throw in that, if you get rid of all of your zoning requirements, then all these headaches go away.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there again.
Thank you, Mr. Cotton. The only thing I've got, it's interesting, Ms. Davison commented on real estate taxes.
Skips me.
And I know it's interesting, I looked at my building, my office building where I am, and our real estate taxes went from $52,000 a year to $84,000 a year. These are direct financial impacts that have been leveled on business properties. In exchange, we got lesser taxation, smaller properties, lesser valued homes. So one of the important things, we didn't discuss it tonight in anything, but I've talked with Mr. Nygren about it. But one of the things I think we're gonna have to really look at as a city is, Mr. Hunter, I know you hate the fact we cut impact fees in half. And what's one of the big arguments why? Development should pay for development. So let's look at what happened when we go back and go 2 sessions ago, our great zoning laws, taking away our ability to make decisions at the local level, encouraging affordable housing. Then they come back in the last session, and the brain trust that is our legislature said, oh, we're gonna fix the real estate tax problem. And the governor said, everything's on the table except these other potential solutions. So when he said all these other things were off the table, I went, oh, we're just gonna squish it around. The bag is gonna go from this, it's gonna go, well, here, here, here. We're gonna hit, I love it, Northwest Energy is gonna get a bigger tax bill. Northwest Energy is a regulated utility, the last I checked. So I know it'll happen with those taxes. They'll go to the PSC and all of a sudden, we'll all pay a little bit more for power. So did they solve the problem? No. But as a city, one of the things that we have to look at now, if we see a subdivision come in with 100, 200, 300 affordable housings, I mean, Mr. Gerson asked, any consideration for affordable housing? One of the things we're gonna have to look at, if these homes are all under the $500,000 level, we get 0.79. They're assessed, or 0.76. They're assessed substantially less. The cost to deliver services will be more than what we get in revenue. So it's one of those things, is development really paying for development? Well, no, but we'll just put it back on the backs of businesses. What happens when we put it on the backs of businesses?
Everything costs more.
Well, I know there's one employee I was gonna hire this year, I'm not. That's the true impact. So I'm fortunate I don't have to let one go. But there's one that we were gonna bring in to add, we're not bringing in and adding. Understand when we make these decisions, and Helena makes these decisions, we have to figure out how to make it work at the city, the local level. We have to make really tough decisions that people don't like. I look forward, and dare I say, I fear for the next 4 years. Because as we've been able over the last 12 to 16 years, recover, maintain a nice reserve for the city of Kalispell to have flexibility to do things that we need to do, that will be taken away from us by sheer economics. Because the more pressure we put on business, business will make a decision to go where it's easier to go. I talked with John Tester several years ago 4 years ago. We were talking about all the corporations leaving the US going to Ireland. And he says, it's a problem. And I said, it's a symptom. And he looked at me and he goes, what do you mean it's a symptom? If you put too much tax pressure on a business and they can move somewhere else and do the same thing and make more money, would you do it as a person? You're darn well going to do it if you have the company. So I just encourage the council, look at these things, because I think, Mr. Hunter, you and the next council, you're going to have to look at, as we see housing units come in, do we get enough revenue? Where do we cut? Or what's the danger if we raise taxes? I think the answer is going to be much like when we looked at the growth policy, when we rewrote it, the prior growth policy only mentioned in housing, affordable housing. And I could remember asking the question, what about high-end housing? I think Kalispell is going to need to encourage $1 million plus housing to generate the revenue to help afford the workforce housing that we need. And we all know we need it. But unfortunately, the legislature painted us into a corner where it's going to be really hard to do that. So with that glimmer of hope,
Thanks for that.
I'm going to adjourn this meeting before midnight.